It's easy to appreciate the beauty of a brand new home, but for a lot of people, it's hard to picture how that home's going to look when you start with just a bare lot. But it's very important to pick the right lot before you ever start that house. There's a lot of different things that are going to change the way the home is built. Today, we're going to try to go through those factors to make sure you pick the right lot so it turns out to be a dream home and not a nightmare. On a zero lot line lot, if you pick out one like that, you can see one side of the house will actually be built on the property line, which means there will be no windows on that side of the house. The other three sides will have windows, but a very small front yard, very small backyard, not a lot of maintenance. When you don't have room in your yard for traditional things like a swimming pool, you've got to be creative when you're designing your house. These people have a zero lot line with no real backyard, so they put the pool on the side of the house. Again, zero lot lines have narrow lots, so they actually had to create the house in almost a C shape to actually fit it in. It's not a full C-shaped house, or else it would wrap around even farther, but it does have a slight C shape to it, so we do have enough room. Another big benefit of putting the pool on the side is the house helps knock out some of the noise that's coming from this 6-lane street right behind the house. That's the thing to consider when you're picking out a home site. Is there a major road with a lot of road noise on it close by? One of the things you need to consider is the orientation of the house. Which direction is it going to face? Which way is the backyard going to face? The sides? That's east, so we know the sun's going to come up over there. That's west, so it's definitely going to go down over there. This house behind me, it's got the front of the house facing east, so there's going to be a lot of light in the morning going that direction. What rooms are those in your house? Is that a master bedroom? Do you wake up early in the morning? Do you want sunlight in your master bedroom? Or should that be your kitchen nook where you've got a lot of light when you're eating breakfast? It's going to depend on you and your lifestyle. The back of that house faces west, so sun's going to go down over there. Is that your family room? Is the sun going to be shining on your TV set? Is it going to be hard to see in the evenings? You've got to pick the right orientation for your home. Over here we've got some homes facing north. The other side, of course, is facing south, and that's great to have your backyard facing south, especially if you have a swimming pool. That way your house is not shading the pool during the summertime. You're getting a lot of light while you're out there in the water. Now, if you pick out a lot at the end of an entryway street to a subdivision, there's a lot of things to consider. One, your house will probably look great because, you enter the subdivision and there it is. But the other problem is in the evening, all of those headlights when people drive in are going to be shining right through your house. So I highly recommend that you don't put the family room or your master bedroom on the front end of a house like this, where lights will be blowing through them all night long. Remember, when you buy a lot that has a lot of trees on it, you may not have a lot of trees once the house is built. We had to take down a few here to make room for the house, and we had to change the design of the house to leave enough room for this tree. So you've got to plan ahead, or else you're going to buy a lot with a lot of trees and have zero trees once the house is done. I know that it seems like a lot of work and a lot of things to remember, but if you spend the time before you ever start the house picking the right lot, you're going to end up with a dream home instead of a nightmare. Remember, it's a combination of you, the buyer, your builder, and your budget to get that perfect home site. Well, if you've ever driven by a construction site before they put down the foundation, you might wonder what all these pipes are sticking up in the air. Well, this is actually our ground plumbing, our rough-end plumbing. It has to go in before we pour the concrete foundation, and it needs to go in the right spot before we pour the foundation because it's going to be hard to change afterwards. This big white pipe you see here is our sewer line, and it comes from all different parts of the house where different bathrooms, kitchen, everything is, and it all flows, gravity flows towards the front of the house because on this particular lot, our city sewer is on the very front, so we need to flow downhill towards it. There's no pressure behind it like there is a water line, so we've got to flow downhill. They're also going to come in and install a copper water line that'll run from the city water main throughout the whole house. It doesn't have to go deep in this ditch because it's not going to freeze underneath the house. Gravity's not as important on that. We just need to get it down low enough that it's not going to freeze, and that won't be a problem underneath the slab. It'll be more than warm enough. As you can see, there's a lot of rock here that we dug up to put this line in. We're going to have a great foundation because we're going to be on solid rock, but it is hard when you're putting in your line. What's going to happen is we're going to backfill this after everything's in place and we get our inspection tomorrow. So we're going to have to go ahead and come in and put sand all around this pipe because we don't want to push this rock in and actually break this PVC pipe, or else we'd have a sewer leak underneath our foundation. It's going to be very hard to fix. We'd have to jackhammer the concrete foundation, get down there, it'd be really a mess. Also, we need to check this sewer line before we cover it up to make sure there's no leaks. So what we're going to do is put caps on everything and then add a little bit of air pressure and have it hold the air pressure for a while and make sure that none of it leaks out. If we're not leaking air, then we're not going to leak any sewer gas or any water or anything, and we'll be okay. Let's go over to the other end. Now there's always a lot of plumbing going on in the bathrooms. A few things you need to watch for. Number one being called WC on your blueprints. What WC stands for is water closet. What it really is a toilet. This is going to be your toilet, the big drain right here. This is going to be the water in the back to come up and refill the tank that sits right above the toilet. Now this is known as a vent stack. The reason you have this is anywhere that you have water draining, it creates a vacuum. Something needs to fill in behind that water. What it fills in with is air. This vent stack will run all the way up through this wall. It'll go through our attic and out through the top of the roof. It'll have a cover on it so rain won't come down in it. But anytime we flush the toilet or we drain water down a shower or a bathtub or a sink, it's got to fill with air, so it'll pull air down through there. If you live in an older home and you flush your toilet, it sounds like a jet engine taking off. It makes a lot of noise. Probably this is crimped somewhere up top. The cover's crimped around it, or a bird has built a nest in it or something. It's got clogged up. It's having a hard time pulling air, so the water's having a hard time going down the pipe. Get someone up there, open that up, get the clogs out. Your toilet will flush a lot easier, or your sink will drain a lot better. Across the bathroom here, we have where our bathtub will go. And this is going to be the drain for our bathtub. It's got a little P-trap on the bottom so we don't let any gas back up through the sewer into there. The P-trap will hold water down in the bottom. The water will never go all the way over, so that way no gas will come back up into make our bathroom smell. Got to have that. You got to have a way to vent that. So again, we got our vent over here in our exterior wall. It'll run down this direction. These are our copper water lines coming in. The one with the red cover is hot. The one with the blue cover is cold. And the reason you wrap it is wherever it's going to touch the foundation or the concrete, the chemical reaction could go off and eat holes through the copper, so we want to go ahead and wrap it in plastic. Over here we have what's known as a clean out. If you ever get a clog somewhere in your sewer line, you've got to stick a snake, it's called. It's a cable down in there, and get that clog broken up. Now one way to do it is climb up on the roof and stick the snake all the way down your vent stack, but this roof is going to be really high. So over here we have a clean out that'll actually stick out of the exterior wall. So you can just come up to the outside, pull that off, stick your snake down in there, and clean out any of your clogs. Actually, they did this all the way around the home. Anywhere they have a vent stack on the exterior wall, they went ahead and put a clean out there. Kitchen's fairly similar, but there's a few little things you should be watching for. Let's go take a look over there. Now our kitchen setup is very similar to the bathrooms, but a few little things we have to change because this kitchen has an island with a sink in the middle of it. So we've got to get our lines over to the sink in the island, and we don't have a wall that we can go up and down. We're going to have our island here, our sink will be right here, we'll have a connection going into this pipe, but again, we can't create a vacuum, we need to give it a way to breathe. So we've got this vent behind it, and we've actually got a loop here. They're actually connected up top, and they're connected at the bottom. So our sewer water will drain straight down, go into our pipe, run back out to the front of the house. We're going to catch air through this vent pipe. Now since it's not going straight up, we have to actually run it back to a wall. So you can see down here we're connected to it. It runs across, and this is a wall between our garage and our kitchen. And here's our vent stack. Just like in the bathroom, it'll run all the way straight up and go out the roof of the house. Next to it here, this 3-inch pipe is not part of the vent system. This is a separate drain pipe. It's running up the wall to catch a bathroom upstairs. Now, it's very important that you pick out things like this before you build the house, before you pour that concrete foundation, because again, it's going to be too expensive to come back and add it later. If you go with the pier and beam foundation where you have wooden trusses across, instead of concrete, you can come back and make some changes and add a few things as long as you can make it drain. But you're going to save a lot of money either way if you do it right before you ever start it. Well, today we're working on one of the most important parts of your home, actually the backbone of your home. It's the foundation. You got to get this part right, because if you don't, the rest of the home will never be right. Things won't be level, doors won't open and close, your sheetrock's going to crack. You've got to get this part just perfect. Guys are out here, as you can tell, pouring concrete. And let's start right there. It's concrete. It is not cement. Cement is an ingredient of concrete. Concrete is cement, water, sand, and gravel. We've got all that here. The guys have a big area to cover also, as you can see. This home is 6,000 square feet. That's about 150 yards of concrete, so about 17, 18, 19 trucks loads out here. You can't reach it by just backing a truck up and putting the chute down. So we've actually got a pump truck here. This is a pump truck behind me, and the guys actually dump the concrete into the back end of the truck. It goes up through the tube and out through the bottom. They just move that tube wherever they're going to need the concrete throughout the foundation. So that way we can get a good, even surface. If we were just dumping it from the side on a foundation this big and trying to pull it out there with the come along, they're going to have a lot of problems. We wouldn't get it level. But as you can see like this, you can dump the concrete anywhere that you need it, so you can have a good quality job. That's what's going to be most important. It's got to be right today. We can't come back later and work on this or fix it. You got to do it right today. This has got what's called about a 5-inch slump. That means if you poured it in a pile, it would stand about 5 inches tall before it would start to fall down. We want about a 5-inch slump on most foundations. That's going to give us a good, strong foundation. Now, concrete has a couple of properties. One is that it gets harder every day of its life because there's chemical reactions going off. The second is it's going to crack. Sometime in its life, it is going to crack, even this big foundation. So what do we do to prevent that from being a problem? We're putting in these cables. These are called post-tension cables. You see this red sheathing here? It actually has an anchor on the other end in the beam of the concrete, and it comes all the way across, and it actually protrudes outside of our form boards here for our foundation. This steel part here is actually what's inside this red plastic sheathing. The sheathing is protection, so the concrete doesn't hurt the steel cable. But we're going to come back later and put a ram on that, and we're actually going to pull that cable to put tension on this foundation, actually pull the concrete tighter. That'll make the concrete stronger, foundation stronger. And then when the concrete does crack sometime, it can't move side to side, it can't move apart, it can't move up and down because you've got all these cables pulling it together from every direction. So we're going to have one solid foundation, which is really what we want for our home. Well, as you can see, the home is now underway. It's been exactly 7 days, and our concrete's hardened up enough that we can go ahead and stress it and put tension on our cables. First thing we need to do, though, is remove this plastic that's here on the cable, put some wedges in so the cable won't back in. So Bobby from Post Tension and Steel is here to get the job started. We'll pull the black piece off, then stick some wedges down both sides. Little pieces of metal, but it will keep the cable from backing back into the foundation. Got to have it, or else there's no way to hold the cable in place once they put tension on. Now you're probably wondering, how much does the cable actually move? Well, the cable moves about 1 inch for every 12 feet. This is about 45 feet across, so we're going to have approximately 3.5 inches of movement once we actually put tension on there. But we need to know for sure that we did do that, so we're going to take a 2x4 and set it against our foundation. We'll set it on a nail and on the cable and just put a little bit of paint there. That's going to give us our marking point. We just use the 2x4 to get a straight edge. Okay, there we go. Do it on this one as well. Now I'll get out of the way and Bobby will come in and put some tension on it. Now you can actually see the hydraulics moving the cable out of the foundation. You can see the first glimpse of our paint there. So you can see we already pulled it a couple inches. And the engineer designed this one to cut off at 5,500 pounds on the gauge. 5,500 pounds on the gauge means that we're going to have about 29,000 pounds of pressure on that cable. That's a lot of tension squeezing that concrete together. So we'll have a good, strong foundation. Pulling the second cable here. There's 66 cables in this foundation. We've got to go pull every single one of them. So Bobby will spend about an hour to get them all exactly where he wants them. And we're there. So now it comes time to measure to make sure that we did pull it far enough and that our gauge wasn't lying to us. Take a tape measure, put our block on there, and we'll look from our block to there, 3.5 inches. You can see it's 3.5 inches to the paint, which is exactly what the engineer designed this for. Now we've got to do all 66 cables around here, but once we're done, we're going to have one solid piece of concrete with tension from all directions pulling towards the center, which will make the concrete stronger, which means a better home for you. No matter how much the ground moves, one foundation. Have you ever got up at midnight and tried to sneak your way into the kitchen for a late night snack, but by the time you got there, so was the rest of the family? Because of those squeaky floors. As soon as you started walking that way, the squeaks gave you away. Well, there's a lot of different ways to prevent a floor from squeaking, and the best way is to build it right to begin with. So if you're building a new home or remodeling, I can show you some ways to make sure your floor will never squeak. It all starts right below my feet right now with what's called an I-joist. Well, here below the second floor, you can see what's actually known as an I-joist. And the reason they call it an I-joist is because of its shape. It's got a cap on the bottom like an I, and then our center long part just like the I in the alphabet, and then a cap on the top. Now the caps are actually laminated veneer lumber, and if you look real close, you can see the different striations in there. It's a lot of pieces of lumber glued together. That's the top and the bottom. Our center point is called oriented strand board, OSB, just like we wrap the exterior of the house with to add strength. Now the reason you use an I-joist like this is because this engineered wood will not warp back and forth. If we had a 2x12 like homes used to be built with, and some still are, and you had that solid piece of wood here, it's hard to keep the wood straight, and it can warp up or warp down a little bit. And then your decking is not going to be flat and level and smooth because the brace is not flat and level. So with the engineered wood that we've got here, we actually have a flat surface. This I-joist is made by Will Land, and a lot of different companies build them now. And they're great to have in your house because if you get your decking perfectly flat and attach it right, it's not going to squeak. A good way to test it if you're having a house built or remodel is try to stick a business card in there. If it's tight, that business card will not go in there. Here you can actually see a little bit of the glue is leaked out. That's a good thing to see. We've got plenty of glue. This is a $1 million house they're building here, so they've got a really nice flooring system, and they did a cutaway for us so we could actually see how our floor decking comes together. You see, it's not just plywood nailed on top of our I-joist, it's actually tongue and groove. And you can see the tongue right here, and it slides into the groove of the other piece. I've got a quick sample here. Pulls apart like this, and one 4x8 sheet slides right into the other 4x8 sheet. So we've got a nice joint there. Now they don't just nail it or screw it in place, they also put glue all the way across the top of the I-joist. We saw some coming out before, and you can see it here on our cutaway where it's coming out. Put the glue all the way across, lay your decking on top of your plywood, slide it together, and then nail it or screw it in place. And remember, you got to hit the I-joist or it doesn't work. Now this decking's a little thicker than normal. This is actually 1 1/8 inch instead of 3/4 inch. Makes a little bit of a difference. Let's go downstairs and see why. Well, Georgia Pacific's helping us out with a little demonstration here. We've got concrete blocks at the end of 2 pieces of plywood, so it's 8 feet across. This is 3/4 inch decking that I'm on. That's 1 1/8. 1 1/8 is what we're using up in the house. When you move up and down on the 3/4 inch, you see quite a bit of flex in it. Now, the floor joists are not 8 feet apart. They're about every 12 inches, so you're not going to see that much flex. You can tell it has some motion in it. You get over here to the 1 1/8 inch, you can see it moves a little bit, but quite a bit less with the same amount of weight on it. Now, you put a floor joist every foot, and it's not going to move hardly at all. So we're going to have a flatter, stronger floor, which means that we're going to have less squeaks when we walk around. So if you want a good quality floor that's not going to squeak, there's just a few things to remember. Take a look at an engineered wood I-joist system to stop those squeaks. Make sure you put on thick decking, maybe even thicker than code requires. That the glue go all the way across the top of the I-joist, not just part of it, and that all nails or screws go through the decking and into the top of the I-joist, not beside it. It doesn't help if they're next to it. You do all that and you might be able to make it to the refrigerator at midnight without the family joining you. Today we're going to talk about one of the most important parts of your home, and that's the roof. It protects you and all of your belongings from the weather, but it also does a couple other things. And if you do it right, you can save a lot of money while you're building your home. Plus, you can really improve the design with just a few changes. Let's go ahead and get started. This house next door is a little further along, so we're going to use its roof line to describe a few different design elements that you might think about while you're building your house. And also consider the weather in your area. If you live up north where there's a lot of ice and snow, you want to go pretty steep with that roof because you want the weather to go straight off of it. If you live in California, you might have a flat roof. That's okay when it doesn't rain much, but if you get rain, it holds on that flat roof. So wherever it's ice and snow, go steep. If there's no ice or snow, you can go flat if that's the look that you're after. Now, roof pitch is determined by a ratio. It's called like a 12-12 roof or a 10-12 roof or a 3-12 roof. That's the pitch. We'll use this as an example. If this was a roof, and let's say it was a 4-12 pitch, that means for every 4 feet we went up, if we went across 12 feet, we'd hit the roof line. Now, a 12-12 pitch would be much, much steeper. We go up 12 feet, over 12 feet, and there's our roof line. So the bigger the top number gets, like 12-12 as opposed to 10-12, the steeper it is. This roof line behind me, the gable on the front, that's very steep. That's a 12-12 pitch roof. Very nice as far as getting weather off. Not worried about the weather here, they're just using it as a design element. This piece along the side, that's not quite as steep. That's a 10-12 pitch. And again, it's just to determine the look of the house, or if you're in a weather area, you might need a steeper pitch. Over here on the other side of the house, they've done a couple interesting design things with the roof. Here you can see a turret that they've built, and it's actually round on the top. Now let me tell you, anytime you build with square lumber, it gets expensive when you build round, but on this house, it's really gonna look good once we're finished. Next to it, we have what's known as a dormer. Dormer is a part of the house that protrudes out onto the roof line and has a window. It allows a lot more light into the house, plus it also breaks up our roof line to add some design element to the roof itself. Once you go inside the house, you can see that there's a lot of bracing up there to hold your rafters in place. The reason for that is we're either going to have a tile or concrete roof on this house. That tile and concrete is very heavy, so you really have to determine what you're going to put on top of the roof before you build it and brace up accordingly. And as you can imagine, if you add more material, there's going to be more expense. Now you can also see our decking right here from the inside. We looked at it from the street, but the decking looks a little different. That's because you can't see the wood from the inside. It's oriented strand board on the out, but it's actually a radiant barrier on the inside. This is TechShield. It's made by Louisiana Pacific, and what it is a radiant barrier. Now your attic can heat up to 140, 150 degrees in the summertime. What this radiant barrier does is the sun comes in and it actually hits this radiant barrier shield and the heat goes away, so you don't have heat gain coming into your attic. Instead of being 150 in the summertime, it might be 110, and that's going to make a huge difference on your utility bills every month. Here we have a little example they've set up for us, and we've got a light bulb putting off heat in there, and then we have two roof lines. This first roof line actually has a heat of almost 100 degrees coming through there. Over here, we're at approximately 70 degrees. So you can see it makes a big difference to have the radiant barrier in there. You might have seen the old style where they drag them and lay them on top of all your insulation, but the heat already gets into your attic and heats up your attic, and it just reflects it from your insulation. With this system, being on the decking itself, the heat won't even come into the attic envelope. So we're gonna have a cooler home. That means we're gonna have lower air conditioning bills. But one last thing, don't forget your rafter clips. These are only about $50 per house with labor. You put them from your top plate of your wall onto the rafter of your house. It keeps your roof on in a tornado or a hurricane. Very inexpensive, but very effective. Well, just to recap, when you're considering a roof, it's all about angles and pitches. And the steeper you go, the less the weather's going to affect it, but the more it's going to cost to build. Get your architect to play around with the design of your home, because just changing that roof a little bit will really change the look. Well, after the foundation, the most important part of your home is the framework itself. That's really the skeleton of your whole home. And it's especially important if you're ever in a tornado, a hurricane, or an earthquake. Now, when builders frame a house and you ever go up and grab the frame, you're going to find it's pretty flimsy. And a lot of times, the only way they attach it to the foundation is just with a nail popped in with a nail gun. You shouldn't be satisfied with that, because if there's ever a heavy wind, your wall just acts like a giant lever. As the wind blows against the wall of your house and the roof, you can see it pulls the nail right out of the foundation. Here on this house, they're doing it right, because before they ever started the first frame, they worked on the foundation. What they did was install an anchor bolt in the concrete while it was still wet. This anchor bolt is shaped like an L. It's down in the concrete like so. And then they drilled a hole in the bottom of the frame and set it over the bolts. You can see it right here. All we have to do is take a washer, put it on top, take a nut, bolt it down. Now, for a wind to knock this wall over, it's actually going to have to either break the bolts, which would be hard to do, pull it out of the concrete, which would be hard to do, or actually crack this 2x6 base plate that we have, which would also be hard to do. So it's going to take a lot more wind, probably 3 times the amount of wind, to take this apart as it would if it was just nailed in place. The next place we need to brace up is where our wall studs actually attach to the bottom plate, because that's where they can come apart in a high wind. We're bolted down on our bottom plate, and you can see it is green, so it's pressure treated even on this side. But here these wall studs are just nailed into it from the angles, and they were probably nailed from the bottom as well. But when that high wind hits the house, hits the walls and the roof, it's going to be pushing backwards. Our plate will stay bolted down, but here's where it'll come apart. To prevent that from happening, we go ahead and we wrap at least the corners with a solid sheet of wood. This is oriented strand board, OSB. This one happens to be made by Louisiana Pacific, but it's rated by the APA, the Engineered Wood Association. When you get into engineered wood like OSB, it normally has a rating. And you can see what it is actually just different layers and pieces of wood glued together, so it makes a very strong board. We've screwed it into the base plate, and then it's screwed into the wall studs as well. That way, for it to tear apart, it would actually have to shear these screws in half or rip all of this oriented strand board apart. So it can take a much, much higher wind before the house comes apart. And if you have the budget for it, go ahead and wrap the whole exterior of your house with oriented strand board. It'll be a much, much stronger home, almost like building a little tank. Now, on the exterior walls, before we go up high and see the next place they can break, we look at how thick our wall studs are. A lot of people like to use 2x4s. I highly prefer a 2x6 exterior wall. It's 50% thicker, which means it's going to be a lot stronger home. Plus we can fit more insulation into it, so it's going to be quieter, and you're going to save money every month because it's going to be more energy efficient. Now, if you've ever watched a TV show about tornadoes, what's the first thing that comes apart on a house? It's the roof. Normally the wind hits the exterior of the house, it comes up, it grabs the overhang of your roof, flips the roof off the house, then the walls can't stand up, they just fall right over. Now the reason the roof comes off so easy is it's just really built for gravity. I mean, the rafters set on top, and they just stick nails down on both sides, actually just toenail it down on top. So if any pressure comes from the bottom, it just pops the nail right out. The way we prevent that is with what's called a rafter clip. Some people call them tornado clips or hurricane straps, but the proper name is a rafter clip. You can see we have one actually nailed in place here. We've got 5 nails here, and then we've got 4 nails here. For the roof to come off now, instead of just pushing these toenails up and out, it actually has to break these nails in half, or the wood has to just tear to pieces. So again, we can take about 3 times the normal amount of wind because we put these little clips on. And these are less than $20 for a whole house, material and labor. So why wouldn't you get these? Very, very inexpensive, and it will keep your roof on in a high wind. Before you build or remodel your next house, remember to specify rafter clips up on top of the walls, bolt or strap down the bottom of the walls, and corner brace at least, if not wrap the whole house in oriented strand board or in plywood to give a good, sturdy structure for a high wind or an earthquake. You do all this and it costs less than $500 on the average home. It's going to be safer and make your family happier. Spend the money now. Did you know that the average 2,000 square foot house has a half a mile of cracks in it? Half a mile of cracks. If you put all those cracks together, that's about like leaving a window open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Can you imagine how much lower your utility bill would be if you didn't have to heat and cool all that air in the summer and winter? And how much water actually gets into your house. You know, every time it rains or there's high humidity in the air, it can actually be pulled into your house through all those cracks and crevices. How are we going to prevent that? We're going to put a windbreaker on our house. We're putting on DuPont Tyvek house wrap all the way around the exterior of the home. In our door jambs, where our windows are going to go in, all the way up past our overhangs, because those are the places where we have cracks. Wherever 2 different building materials come together, we have a potential leak, and we don't need a leak in our house. We want to keep those utility bills low, and we don't want to let the water get inside, because once the water's inside, we can start rotting out the wood frame of our house, plus mold and fungus can grow in there, and if you get allergies, it could be really bad inside your home. So everywhere that we've got doors and windows, we've got wood coming together, we need to cut it off, so we just wrap the entire house. And it's not expensive. You buy it in rolls. To do a 2,000 square foot house, you're looking at about $1,000 for the material and the labor. It also comes with tape. Wherever the rolls overlap, you tape it up. All the way around your doors and windows, you tape that up as well, because we need to prevent all leaks. Now, one thing I mentioned was this was a little different than the ordinary DuPont Tyvek. And again, you can see that it's crinkly. The reason for that is normal Tyvek is smooth. This one's wrinkly because it's stucco wrap. Stucco wrap is a little different. We're going to actually put an eave system stucco on the exterior of this house. Stucco has a bad problem about trapping moisture inside the walls. We need a way to let it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach foam on here, and then we're going to put our stucco on top of that. When the water gets behind the stucco, where any 2 materials come together, it will actually hit these channels in this Tyvek, and the water can't enter into the house, but it's not trapped in the wall. It actually just runs straight down these channels, and it'll go out the bottom of our walls. So we're not going to have any moisture trapped behind our stucco. We're not going to have any moisture getting inside the wall. It'll all come down to the bottom just like it should on any exterior siding. Well, you wouldn't let a family member leave a window open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and you shouldn't do it either. When you build your house, put a quality home wrap around the whole house. It's the windbreaker for your home. Keeps the wind and the air out, keeps the allergies lower, plus you're going to save money every month on that utility bill. Well, you know that the average house is built out of a lot of wood. It takes a lot of studs to frame the house, and then you have to put sheathing on it, decking up on the roof. You use different things like OSB, oriented strand board, which are pieces of wood glued together, or actually sheets of wood like this plywood that are layers of wood put together. Plywood and OSB are just 2 types of engineered wood. A number of different companies make wood products that are engineered to remove defects common to raw wood. Engineered wood is longer, stronger, and straighter than raw wood, and you'll find it all over this house, in the frame, in the flooring system, wrapped around the exterior, underneath the roof tiles. There's a trade group called the APA, the Engineered Wood Association. Their main goal is to make sure that all these engineered wood products are manufactured to meet high industry standards, and we're working with them to make sure houses are built right so that all the engineered wood in your new house performs the way it was engineered to perform. And the one thing you want to avoid on all wood, whether it be the wood framing or the decking and sheathing, is moisture, because moisture over time is going to rot through that wood and it's going to take the strength out of the wood. It can actually delaminate the sheathing and the decking. That's not something that we want, so we need to build the house right to prevent that from ever happening. Now the moisture is going to get to the wood in a few different ways. Right here I've got 9 gallons of water. How do you think this gets in your house each day? Inside your house, you're going to actually put 9 gallons of water up in the air every single day. You're going to do it whenever you're boiling water. You're going to do it whenever you turn on a shower. You're going to do it whenever you're talking. Moisture is going into the air inside your house. And if you don't do something to get it out, it's going to get too humid inside, and that moisture is actually going to work its way to the wood. The wood can build up all sorts of fungus and molds, and that's going to be bad for your allergies, or worse yet, the wood can start to rot or delaminate. Now, to expel this 9 gallons of water, we need to have some ventilation systems set up in our house. All around our stovetops, we need a downdraft or an up vent, a hood above it that's venting all the way to the exterior of the house. The vent shouldn't just run to the attic like some builders do, but go all the way out of the house through the roof. Plus, around our bathrooms, we need vents in those rooms as well. Go ahead and get that moisture out of the house, or else it's going to end up in your wall cavity. It's going to end up rotting your wood and causing you allergies. Now, the house itself, when you build it, has a lot of cracks in it. A 2,000 square foot house has about half a mile of cracks where different building materials come together. We need to seal up those cracks. It's a good idea to spray foam in them, but it's also a better idea to go to the outside and put a house wrap all the way around the home. Here we're using Tyvek by DuPont, and what it does is prevent moisture from getting inside the wall cavity. Wherever these wood's coming together and there's a crack there, it won't get there. As you can see, we can't even see the wood. That's because we've wrapped the whole thing in this windbreaker that also keeps moisture out. Water cannot penetrate this surface, and that's what we want. We also need to watch wherever our windows and doors are installed. A lot of framers will just nail them up in place, walk away from them and not worry about it. We need to do more than that. We've taken our Tyvek here, we've wrapped it inside the window frame and taped it down. Then we nailed our windows up against that. So we've got a pretty good surface there, but there's still a chance that moisture could get in around that flange and go down the side of the window and avoid the Tyvek. So to prevent that from happening, we've got a special tape on here that's taped on both the Tyvek and on the window flange itself. So now we have no way for the moisture to penetrate anywhere around our windows. We need to do this on every window, plus we need to do it on all the door frames. If you tape up around all your windows and doors, install a quality house wrap around your whole home, plus do proper ventilation, you're going to have a healthier house. Plus, your frame and decking and sheathing will keep its strength and integrity for your lifetime. Well, it's time to put the shingles on our roof on our project house. In the old days, you only picked a shingle just to keep the water out of the house. Now there's a lot of different selections as far as material, the composition, how much they cost, what they look like, how they're made. We start with our roof decking, and the framers have put up oriented strand board, which is actually strips of wood glued together. It makes a very, very strong surface. On top of that, we're going to put either fiberglass or some sort of felt. And the reason for that is if any water gets past our shingles or shakes and hits the roof line, we want it to hit the fiberglass or felt and run straight off our roof. We don't want it to get even to the oriented strand board. We just want it off the roof. That'll be our next layer. On top of that, number one thing to do is just a conventional shingle. These are fiberglass and asphalt combination. They're called composition shingles, 3-tab shingles. Very easy to install, not very heavy, so you really don't have to build up your roof line. Price-wise, anywhere from about $20 to $200 per square. Now, a square is how you measure area on a roof. A square is 10 feet by 10 feet. Now, behind me, I have what looks like a clay tile, and it's similar to what we're putting on our roof right now here on our project house, but it's not clay. It's actually made out of concrete. Now, they are heavier than a clay tile, but they're less expensive. As far as the weight, you really need to load your roof line before you actually nail them in place. We've gone ahead, they set shingles all around here a couple days ago and just let them set for a while to see how the roof line reacted, to see if it was too much weight. The architects designed with this much weight in mind, but it's a good idea to just go ahead and load the shingles up just in stacks and just see if the roof line bows anywhere. If it does, you don't want to nail them in place. You want to go ahead and brace up accordingly. We were okay, but it's a good safety precaution. And they also make this one also. This looks like a cedar shake. I do not recommend cedar shakes because easy to catch on fire. You shoot them with an ice ball or hail, they break to pieces. This one has the look of a cedar shake, but it's actually lightweight concrete. So it's not as heavy as our other tile. We're not gonna have to brace up the roof as much or spend as much money, but it makes a really nice look, strong tile. And again, it can withstand some high impacts from hail and stuff. This is a Decra shake, and this looks like it's a bunch of cedar shakes. If you flip it over to the other side, what you see is it's actually made out of steel. Now the nice thing about this steel shingle is it's very lightweight, so you don't have to brace up the roof a lot to support it. Plus, when we tested this in a laboratory and hit it with an ice ball at 100 miles per hour, the ice ball really just bounced off and fell to the floor and just left a little dent in our steel shingle. So it's gonna last for years and years and years. They put the aggregate on top of it for looks. Plus also, if there's ever a fire inside your house and a fireman had to get up on your roof, they're not gonna slip and slide because they're on bare steel, but they'll actually be on that aggregate and be able to keep their footing on a wet roof. Now, as far as roofs go, as you can see, there's a big variety in prices and designs and looks, but that's because people like different things on their house. And it's one of the biggest visual things you see when you pull up to a house is that roof line. Ours behind us, we use multi-colors all along the different tile shapes. But once it's done, it's really gonna be a beauty. Well, our project house is coming along nicely, but it is a big house, 6,000 square feet with 16 individual rooms in it. That's a lot of space to heat and cool, and we can have high utility bills every month if we don't install our HVAC properly. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. We want to do it right so that it's comfortable in every single room, and it doesn't cost us very much each month to operate. Let's go upstairs and get started. Well, as you can see, there's a lot of equipment and a lot of ductwork up in this attic, and that's what it takes to make the house perfect. And by perfect, I mean comfortable in every room of the house, plus low utility bills every month. Now, to make all this work, I brought in an expert. I've got Tim Perry with me today from Bryant Heating and Cooling. Good to have you here, Tim. Hey, a lot of stuff up in this attic. Can you show me how it works?
Sure. We're going to keep the homeowners very comfortable and do it cost effectively.
That's exactly what they're after. Let's take a look.
This is a two-stage furnace, and it's like two furnaces in one. A normal furnace in the past has one speed and it's full capacity.
Okay.
And that's designed to keep the home comfortable during the coldest days of the year. But the rest of the time, it's too big.
If you're in late fall or early spring and it's just a little cool outside, just blast heat in, just like in the wintertime?
Exactly.
Okay.
And the two-stage has the ability to run on low fire, which is about 65% of its full capacity. So the low fire can provide the right amount of heat for the more mild days.
And how do you do two-stage?
There are two major devices. One is the gas valve inside the unit. The other device that really helps is this variable speed motor from GE. This motor adjusts itself to run the right airflow for low fire operation. Because what that does is it makes the heating more even and therefore more comfortable in the home.
So the heat can move slowly through the house during the late fall or early spring instead of just blasting in there?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's right.
And then how about the humidity that's inside the house?
This is another way that the variable speed motor can help, because to remove humidity properly, you really need to slow the airflow down. And this motor knows how to do that and do it very efficiently.
Right.
And of course, what we do during the air conditioning months, water condenses out of the air on a refrigerant coil just like it's condensing on this cold glass of ice water.
So in our air conditioning unit, we have coils, and we're going to take the air past those coils and pull the moisture out of the air basically onto those coils. And if it was just moving real fast, we really wouldn't have time to do that, would we?
Exactly. When you slow the air down, it has a longer chance for the humidity to be wrung out of the air. And the other way they save money is with this variable speed motor. When it runs to remove humidity, it runs much more efficiently.
Because it's moving at a slower speed.
That's right.
That's great. Well,
Right.
the house is more comfortable, and we're saving money. We're headed in the right direction.
That's
Okay.
right.
Now downstairs I talked about, we got 16 rooms that we
Yes.
need to work on. Do you zone those rooms, or how do you keep them even throughout the house?
You zone those rooms so that each room can have its own temperature. And that's great, especially if certain rooms go unoccupied for a period of time.
Okay, we'll see how that works.
Okay?
Well, Tim, it's not hard to find a zoning control when you go up in the attic. I mean, only one thing sticking out of the ductwork.
That's right. This is the way we're going to control heating and cooling for each zone independently. This is a zone control. There's a motor here, and there's a damper inside the ductwork that will open and close when the zone is calling for heating or cooling.
Well, I've actually got a piece right here, and I guess the electrician will just tap in there and it'll send a signal saying to open or close this to block or let more air come through there.
Yes, that's right. There's a thermostat in each zone that calls for heating or cooling, and that signal is sent to that damper.
That's great. So our thermostat will have different programs for different rooms of the house.
That's right.
Okay, and then if the kids go off to school or something and we want to just shut down a room, the signal will just be to close it up all the way.
That's right, and that's a great way to save energy.
Yeah, no need to heat or cool a room no one's using.
Right.
Now I've got 2 rooms downstairs next to each other that would be a perfect example of why, even if you are using both rooms, you might need some zoning controls.
Great.
Well, I think this room is a great example of why we might need zoning in a house. We've got a big 2-story room, floor-to-ceiling windows, and it opens up into our kitchen, into our breakfast nook. There's a fireplace in the breakfast nook, a fireplace in here. And then you go across this divide, and here's this little bedroom with 1 window and 1 door. There's no way to get these temperatures balanced unless we zone the house, because you've got all this heat build up from windows and fireplaces. Nothing up there.
Yes, that's right. Each room is going to need a different level of heating and cooling to keep it the right temperature for that room.
Yeah, and I sure don't want to pay for separate units for separate rooms of the house. So.
That's right. And zoning can provide that sort of control room to room.
Well, I sure appreciate all the help today, Tim.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Well, a few things to remember if you're going to put in a new HVAC system or you're building a house from the ground up. One, take a look at the variable speed motor from GE. It can save you a lot of money, and it can make the home more comfortable because it lowers the humidity throughout the house. And last but not least, don't forget about zoning. You need it not only when people leave the house, but also when you're living in the house every day. It can save you a lot of money and you feel more comfortable. Well, it's time on our project house to start adding the insulation into the walls, and as you can see, the guys are hard at it right behind me. But it's not the typical insulation that you would see. This is actually cellulose that they're blowing into the wall cavities. Cellulose is a pulp product. It's actually a wood product, and this is 100% recycled newspaper and telephone books. So we're saving the environment while we're using it at the same time. A lot of people are worried about using cellulose because they're afraid it might catch on fire, but this actually has a fire retardant on it, so we don't have to worry about that fact. If the wall ever catches on fire, this will actually slow the fire instead of speeding the fire up. You can see the guys are wearing dust masks. That's because it is not hazardous to your health, but there are a lot of little granules in the air. As a matter of fact, I'm already starting to taste some now standing as far back as I am. It's really a nice system. Now the way it holds in place is there's a hose coming up with water that actually activates an adhesive that's on this paper product, this cellulose product. It glues itself in place. The water dries out, but the glue is always there holding it up. So the insulation is not going to settle over time the way a lot of other types of insulation do. That insulation is always going to stay in the wall cavity all the way throughout. So you can see Juan's just going back and forth, blowing it in place. Then they come in with a roller, and they're going to smooth it out. It actually grinds it away. The reason you need to smooth it out is the drywall guys have got to come in and hang the drywall, and if it's sticking out, you're not going to get a good level wall. So they'll go ahead and run that down, and then tomorrow the drywall guys are ready to come in and nail all the drywall in place. It's going to be super energy efficient. It's not going to catch on fire. We are going to get our true R factor. This wall is 2x6, which means we can go R19. R19 is a big number for a wall. A 2x4 wall, the maximum you can do is R13. We went with the 2x6 wall so we can get in more insulation, so we have lower utility bills every month. Blowing it in the way we are, we can go in any crook, cranny, any crevice in the wall. We can go in our T's in our corner, we can go around wires, and we're still going to have our full R19 insulation because we're not compressing it. We're keeping it expanded the way it should be. This is 100% recycled newspaper and telephone books. But once it's up, it's glued in place. Like I said, it is fire resistant, it's super energy efficient, and it's not going to settle over time. So the whole wall from floor to ceiling is going to remain energy efficient. If you or one of your family members sneeze every time you walk into the house, or you have high utility bills, your attic is probably not properly ventilated. When you don't ventilate your attic correctly, you end up with mold and fungus growing up there, and that causes the allergies and the sneezing. And you end up with high utility bills because in the summertime when it heats up in the attic, that pocket of air gets bigger and bigger and ends up working its way into your house, and then you've got to pay to cool that hot air out of the attic. And you don't want to do that. You've got to properly ventilate it from day one when you build a house. And it starts out here on what most people call the overhang. Now the overhang is made up of fascia, which is the exposed end, and then the soffit, which is the piece that's running horizontal. And in the middle of that soffit, all the way around the house, you should see these vents. The vent is silver, it's not like the rest of the overhang. We're going to paint it all one color later. So let's go up in the attic and I'll show you exactly how the vent's going to work. Now it's hard to get back to actually see the vent itself, but it's on the other side of that wall plate where we have our soffit and our fascias. You can see a little extra light down there, that's from outside. And the air comes up through there and it runs in between these rafters in this cavity, and it'll help push that hot air in the attic on out of the attic itself. Now a lot of times when they blow in insulation in the ceiling, they blow right over that vent. And if you already own a home, you can go outside and pull down your vent on your fascia, just unscrew it, and I bet you see a lot of insulation. They're going to come in and actually staple like a plastic or foam baffle that'll go right here and let the air go on the back side, but it'll prevent any insulation from being blown in and blocking it. Then we need a way to expel the hot air that's already in the house. And we've got several options there. Let's go downstairs and take a look. Well, this is probably a pretty common vent that you've seen up on the roof of a house. This is a twirler, and they really work well. You just mount it on the roof line up high. You need it towards the top of your roof because hot air is going to rise. Whenever the wind blows, it actually turns this. The air will actually hit it and move it around. That'll help draw some air up through those soffit vents and clean out that hot air that's building up in the summertime in your attic. Now, a lot of people like to put plastic bags over these in the wintertime to prevent air from moving through your attic. Don't do that because you end up with a lot of moisture buildup in your attic in the wintertime. Your house is hot, the air upstairs is cold, so it forms moisture just like it would on the side of a glass of ice water in the summertime. So leave it open even in the wintertime. Let that thing go ahead and twirl. Another very common system is a ridge vent. This is what one looks like. You can see it's very long. It goes along the top of your roof line, the ridge itself. Bends over it like such and it's nailed down. I've actually got a cutaway of it here that you can see with the shingle on top as well. Here's our roof line coming up both sides. We don't bring our plywood or our OSB all the way together. We hold it back just a little bit, so we've got an opening there. And then we mount our plastic ridge vent there, put our shingle over the top of it. These actually turn up to help draw air down in there, almost like an airplane wing. So we get a good draw going throughout our whole attic and no moving parts, so not much to take care of. This is made by a company called O'Hagan, and this is what we're actually putting on this house because we're using a tile roof. Tile roof would be hard to do with the ridge vent. Our twirler wouldn't look right on it. So we mount this in different places throughout our roof line. If you look at it from a side view, you can see that it's actually elevated. You look at it from behind, see here's where the air comes through. So our hot air has a place to escape if we mount this high enough on the roof line. And then we just put our tile up against it. And you clean the oil off of this and you actually paint it the exact same color as your tile so it blends in. We've actually got one mounted outside. And again, it looks a lot better than using a ridge vent or a twirler, and we've got to have some way to get that hot air and that moisture out of the attic, so we're going with this on our house. One other point to remember also is if you don't have proper ventilation on your attic, you're going to lose your warranty on your asphalt or fiberglass shingles. Those companies don't cover the shingles if you don't have proper ventilation because that heat buildup will cause them to delaminate. If you do have proper ventilation, your family's going to sneeze a lot less, plus you're going to have lower utility bills every month. Well, the guys are putting the windows in our project house, and when you pick windows for your house, whether it's brand new construction or a remodeling job, there's a few things to consider. One is the beauty and looks of the window. Number two is the energy efficiency, and then number three is the price, and believe it or not, all three of those factors affect each other. We'll start with price. Here we've got an aluminum frame window, very common, use them all across the United States. The least efficient as far as energy-wise on a window, and also the least expensive. The problem with an aluminum frame window is that hot and cold transfer right through the frame itself. So if it's hot out here on the outside, that heat transfers right through the window to the inside of the frame. If it's cold outside, the cold comes across. It's almost like having a skillet. Whatever the temperature is below it, that's what it is above it. Well, the same with the aluminum frame window, it passes through. But again, it's very inexpensive. If that's what you need for your house, you can do it with aluminum. Now next to it here, we have a vinyl frame window. Vinyl frame windows are normally a little more expensive, but much more energy efficient. Hot and cold don't transfer through vinyl the way they do through aluminum, so it makes for more energy efficiency. And something you ought to watch for on any type of window you pick out is the NFRC label. Now, NFRC is the National Fenestration Rating Council. That's a consortium of all the window manufacturers who came up with a way to rate the energy efficiency of a window. And you'll actually see a U factor here. And you can compare those between different window manufacturers to see what type of rating you have on your window. Now again, vinyl is an upgrade from aluminum frame, so it is more expensive. They're doing great things with vinyl. They don't have the problems that they used to with vinyl windows. So if you're building new construction or doing some remodeling, vinyl might be the choice that you want. Now in our project house, we're going with the big daddy of them all. We're going with wood frame windows. Wood frame windows are great because they're very, very energy efficient. You can do any shape or style that you want with the windows, and they last a long time because you clad the exterior with something else. Even though it's a wood frame window and you can see the wood from the inside, here on the outside, we've got a vinyl cladding over the window. The vinyl makes a nice exterior that won't fade over time, but on the inside we do have that fine wood finish, so we can do any type of stain or painting that we really like. Now, besides the cost of a window like this, you've got to take into account when you go this big, there's going to be some additional costs besides the window itself. Let's go inside and we'll take a look. Andersen Windows produced these beautiful picture windows for us, but there's a few things we had to do to make sure that they fit and that the wall was still strong enough, because this is a load-bearing wall. Any exterior wall, which is where your windows would be, are load-bearing. That means they support weight above them besides the weight of the wall. Here we got a roof line setting on this wall. So instead of going with a 2x6 exterior wall, we had to build it out with a 2x10, not just around the windows, but the whole length of the wall, because we're missing all these studs right here. So these have to be bigger to support that weight above us. Plus, the glass had to be thicker because this window is so big, it's a little thicker than normal. Now, the window manufacturers can do custom things like that and build the window the way you want it, but just remember the price is going to be affected by doing things like that. Now, there's a lot of choices in window types. This is a fixed pane window. There's a lot of other choices as well. Plus, there's a lot you have to look at for energy efficiency because this window is so big, it's going to let in a lot of sunlight and heat. Let's go outside and look at our options. Now, as far as the type of window, there's a lot of different choices available. But real quick, I would like to show you a cutaway of a window. This is a side view of it. As you can see on this one, we had our vinyl cladding on the exterior. We had our wood interior on the frame. But here on the glass, it's a double pane window, and we want that at least 2 panes. It's 50% more efficient. We also have a low E coating on the inside of this first pane. Now, a low E coating prevents a lot of that heat from the sun coming through into your house during the summertime, plus it keeps a lot of heat from escaping out of your house during the winter time. We put an inert gas in between the 2 panes of glass instead of just air. That also makes it more energy efficient. Don't forget to look for that NFRC label on the window though, to make sure that you are buying a quality energy efficient window. As far as types of windows, there's a lot of different types out there. We saw the fixed pane windows inside the house that are just one piece of glass. Here we have a casement window. And a casement means that it cranks out. These are always great to have. They're normally good looking windows. Great to open in the spring and in the fall. Let some air move around the house. You can also get a single hung window. A single hung window means that if you open it up, the bottom sash can go up or down. This one is actually a double hung window. Now, double hung means that both the top and the bottom sash can go up and down. So you can get a nice cross ventilation through your window. Makes it really nice to do. Plus, if you have small children, you can drop that bottom sash, just leave that top one open, let some air come through, but they can't get out. And this one's got a neat feature also. If you need to clean your window, it has a tilt-out sash. We just pull these little tabs down like so. And then the sash just pops right out. That makes it very easy to clean the exterior of your window without having to use a ladder. And our upper sash, we could just reach through there and clean it as well. If we're not on a ladder, there's a lot less chance of us getting hurt. Let's move our tabs out of the way, and then we pop our window back in place, and we're locked and done. Now remember, there's 3 things that make up the choice for a good quality window. That's going to be the beauty, how energy efficient the window is, and the price. And the price is going to be determined by that beauty and energy efficiency. But if you make the right choice, you'll enjoy your windows for the lifetime of your home. Well, it's time to hang the drywall in our project house. And drywall does a lot besides just make the house look good. It also protects you in case of a fire. If your house ever catches on fire, you need plenty of time for you and your loved ones to get out of the house, and drywall is a great way to slow down a fire. There's a number of different manufacturers that produce drywall, but a lot of people call it sheetrock. Sheetrock is actually like Kleenex. It's a trade name, and the trade name's owned by USG. The interior of drywall is actually made of gypsum. Gypsum is a mineral that they mine out of the ground, and it really doesn't burn very well, so it gives you a lot of time to move and get out of the house. Both edges are paper, just so you can get a slick surface. You can finish it any way you want with normal paint, faux finishes, or even hang wallpaper on it. 1/2 inch thick is normally what you find in most homes, on the walls and on the ceilings. Though on the ceilings, you normally have a little bit stronger piece because they're not nailed every 18 inches. They're normally 2 feet on your ceiling structure. Out around your garage, you're going to find a little bit different type of drywall. This is actually known as X-rated drywall. Now, X-rated drywall is not the same as X-rated movies. It's a little different. What it does is it slows down a fire. When they test this, when they put this drywall onto studs on a house and try to burn through it, it's going to take 1 hour to penetrate through there. So if you have a fire starting in a different part of the house, it's going to take a while before it gets to you. And around your garage is probably the most common area to start a fire because you have gasoline out there in lawnmowers and in automobiles. A lot of times you have water heaters out there. So putting the 5/8 inch thick X-rated drywall around the garage is really going to help slow down the fire. And a lot of places it's required by code now and should be used in every home. Got something really different down here called Fibrock by USG. And what's special about it is if you have kids or maybe you pull into your garage a little too far every once in a while and bump it, impact resistant. We tested this in the lab, swung big weights of sand against it, and this is a great drywall to have wherever you might have an impact. Well, when you hang the drywall in your house, the walls go from looking like this to something much more like this. And it's going to make the whole house feel like it grows. When you walk through a house that's under construction, it doesn't really feel big enough. Once you put the drywall on, every room expands. Remember, when you're picking out your material, you need 1/2 inch thick on your ceilings and most of the walls in your house. Go with a 5/8 inch thick X-rated type drywall around your garage or anywhere else that might catch fire. And if you got kids or a high impact room, go with Fibrock. After our drywall is hung, it's time to tape and bed the drywall. Now, tape is just what it's called. It's a piece of tape that you put around any of the joints because we want to cover up the joints. When we look down the wall, we want that wall to be perfectly smooth. We don't want to see any joint on it. And on our corners, we want those smooth as well. So we lay a strip of tape, but then you don't even want to see the edge of that tape, so you bed the tape. Something a little different right here, that's a rounded corner. That's called bullnose. Normally corners come together and they're sharp and square. And then you run your tape on both sides, and you have a piece of steel in the middle that's got a sharp edge on it. A lot of people go into the rounded corners just for looks. It doesn't do anything, it's just looks. Not very expensive to add a bullnose instead of a straight edge. It's a little more work, but not too much work. You can do things like this to really change the look of your walls, and there's a lot of different plaster techniques you can do on the wall as well. Before we get to that though, I want to show you one thing right above me, and that's an arch. Now, the guys did a great job on this. It really has a nice radius to it. But that is hard to build. Your framer's got to do something special. They've got to frame that in that shape. Then your drywall guys have got a hard material. Drywall's like little bits of rock actually ground up, made into a solid surface. So to get that round shape, they've actually got to lay out a piece of drywall and slice it along the back in a number of places and then actually bend it. And you can't bend a solid sheet. That's why they put the cuts in it to allow it to expand. And they've got to form it up there. And then the tape and bed guys got to be good enough to go ahead and fill that in where you don't see a bunch of little lines where it was bent. Now, even when you do a great tape and bed job and go for smooth walls, occasionally you can see some imperfections. So most people put texture on the walls. And now this is called orange peel that the guys are putting up now. It's by far and away the most common and most popular. And it does look like the peeling of an orange, except of course it's not orange. You can paint it any color that you like once it's dry. And the best thing about it is going to hide any imperfections in the wall, so you're not going to see joints. Besides orange peel, you can do other things. This one is called skip trowel. And you don't blow the texture on there. What you actually do is you pick up texture with your trowel and just rub it over. And it almost looks like icing on top of a cake. And you can see a lot of little indentations in it. You can see our lines like I'm talking about as far as icing goes. Someone ran their fingers through this while it was wet. That's not supposed to be there, but the rest of it is called skip trowel. It's more expensive because there is more handwork to it, but it does give you a different look. Maybe something in a library or a formal room of the house. Here we've got one that's not very expensive, but has a real nice look to it. And this is called a knockdown or drag down texture. They spray it on just like they do the orange peel, but then they run their trowel over the top of it and just knock the top edges off of it and pull them together a little bit. This one had paint and glaze put over the top of it to give it that reflective look. Really nice, not very expensive to do. The paint technique is, but not the texture itself. Once again, knockdown. Here's more of a faux finish look. This is sort of a combination. Spray it on there, put some on their trowel both, rub it across, and get a real different look. Again, a lot of paint work went into this. You can just paint it one color, but if you paint it and glaze it, it really looks sharp. Here we did some stuff with no texture whatsoever. We're going to be doing a little bit of this in different rooms in the house. This is just plaster. And we actually went up and put the plaster on. And on these samples that the guys did, if you can get right next to it, you can see how smooth it is. It almost looks like glass. There is not a big buildup. You've got to do a really good tape and bed job because we don't want to see any imperfections on this because we're keeping the coating so thin. And even though it's thin and smooth, you can see every single line from the trowel in here. Really, really nice effect, but very, very expensive. I mean, we're talking a lot of handwork and doing excellent job all the way through. Here they put tape around the edge. They put their plaster on, did again a smooth finish like we had on our brown piece there, but they went ahead and pulled the tape, so we had a border all the way around it. If you do something like this or attempt something like this, you've got to pull the tape while the plaster's still wet. If you wait till it dries and you pull the tape, you're going to end up with cracks and rough edges all the way around. Now the question always comes up, to get these effects, what's the price going to be? Well, orange peel or a knockdown technique is something that can be done by your builder or remodeler, and it's not very expensive to do, and it is something you can do yourself. As far as the plaster and these mirror thin types, they're very expensive. It takes a lot of man hours. It's not a lot of material, but it is a lot of hard work. I'm sure you've gone through the home magazines and seen some beautiful rooms and wondered, could I ever have a room like that? But before you do the room, do a piece of drywall, paint it the color that you want at the very end, take it into the room, lean it up against the wall, turn on the lights, and see how it's going to look once it's the finished product in your house. You may surprise yourself. Well, our project house is finally taking shape. We're not at the end yet, but we're getting close. There's still a lot of work going on, but now's the time that we can walk through the house and see what all those details meant back when we were doing the foundation pour and framing the house and putting up the drywall and the molding. Now we can walk through and see how the archways look, the columns, the windows, and see if there's some things that you might want to do to your own personal house. Let's take a look. Now our bridge that we built that overlooks the family room looks awesome whether you're up on top looking down or you're down below looking up, because it looks like it's floating. There's no visible means of support. We've got one load-bearing wall back here, but nothing on the front side. And then coming out of our entryway, we have this huge open expanse where it looks like there's no support. It's just floating in air. Well, the way we did that is with a glue lamb. A glue lamb is actually a beam that's made out of several studs glued together. And once you glue all of these together, it adds so much strength. It's almost like putting a steel beam up there. That runs along our backside from the corner on our load-bearing wall all the way to this load-bearing wall that can support that weight. Now, projecting out towards the family room, you can't use a glue lamb. There's nothing to place it on. So we've made basically a lattice work out of these eye joists. Now, eye joist is to replace a stud. You might have built a bridge out of a stud before, or floors out of studs. The problem with them is they warp and they can actually end up making for a squeaky floor. With an eye joist, they're not going to warp with moisture or humidity changes because it's 3 different materials glued together. On this one, we've got several layers on the top of our eye joist glued together, several layers on the bottom of our eye joist, and in the middle, we have this oriented strand board, OSB. It's pieces of wood actually glued together, and it forms the shape of an eye, and that's why it's called an eye joist. When we have a humidity change, this is not going to flex back and forth between these 3 different pieces. So it's going to be good, straight, strong, no squeaks. It can hold a lot of weight, so we use our beam in the back, our glue lamb, and then we used our eye joist projecting out. So now we have a floating bridge. Now, part of the architecture design that really sets this house off are our columns and our archways that we built here between our kitchen and breakfast nook and the family room. Now, it looks like a lot of work went into it, and it really did. It is a lot of work. But it started with just columns and a flat level ceiling coming out of our kitchen and nook. We put a glue lamb in all the way across, just like we did on our floating bridge. Well, here we did it to hold up the second floor. Our columns are plaster and really look nice, but they don't support the weight of that second floor. Inside the columns, we really have steel posts that run from the floor straight up, and they support the glue lamb itself. Then we just put the plaster columns around those pieces of steel. Now, the archways were something the interior designer wanted to add after we had already built this structure. We came in afterwards and just framed in with extra material the archways themselves. They don't support the weight up top. It's that glue lamb that's in there plus the steel that's inside of these columns that does all of the work. As you can see, it really looks sharp. Let's take a look at these windows. Now, one of the really dramatic parts of this family room are these windows. 4 feet wide, 18 feet tall. We're going to let a lot of light in with these 3 windows, but we had to plan ahead because there's a lot of factors to take into effect to make sure that they're installed properly and we're not going to have a problem in the future. Number 1 being the glass. This is some big panes of glass. We couldn't use normal glass. We were fortunate enough that Cardinal Glass worked with Andersen Windows to design a pane that's thicker, but also has a little bit of flex to it because we are going to be hit with a lot of wind on a window this large, and we need the window to be able to move just a little bit and not crack on us. We also had to do some things with the wall because we're giving up a lot of places where we would have studs. I always recommend that you go with a 2x6 for an exterior wall. 2x6 is 5.5 inches thick, and that's normally more than enough. The problem is every 16 inches you should have a stud. We've got 4 feet here with no studs whatsoever. So we had to beef up to a 2x10. I'll put it here against the jamb and you can see much, much thicker. But we needed this extra wood to support all that weight above. We've got a concrete roof on top of this. We can't hold it up with the glass itself. We've got to put the studs in that are strong enough to hold that roof up. Now we did something really special in the master bedroom. Let's go take a look. Now in our bedroom, what we were after was big. We wanted a really big bedroom with its own unique feel. We did part of that with the ceiling. We used I-joists to go ahead and span this big open area so we didn't have a lot of support walls. We also changed up the ceiling finish as well. We've got a big square in here that we popped in, plus a triangle on each side to give it its own unique feel. We did something different over here because there's no second floor above us on this side, so we put in a plaster dome. It looks really nice. It wasn't hard. We had to add just a little bit of wood to brace up for it, but since there's nothing above us, we didn't have to change the roof line or mess with anything like that. One last unique thing that I really like to do in houses is put in a see-through fireplace between the bedroom and the bathroom. It looks great from both rooms. Well, as you can tell, our project house is a big house and we have a lot of open areas. We have a second floor with extra bedrooms, plus we've got a game room and a study. There's a few things you need to consider when you have a house that's very open, and that's the heating and air conditioning. You don't want to pay to heat and cool this whole house to the exact same temperature, and you can't do it to the exact same temperature with these open areas unless you zone the house. Zoning is not very expensive to do. You have separate dampeners and separate controls and sensors in each room of the house. Even though you might only have 1 or 2 units, you have different temperatures working throughout the house to make sure that it's comfortable and those utility bills are low. Now, I showed you a lot of stuff today, but some of this stuff you can do in your own house if you're building a new home or remodeling your existing home. Remember, it's those little details that really set off the look of the home. Well, as the project house moves along, the guys have started installing all of the molding. As you can see in this room, our molding is very different. It's more like original molding. The way trim got that name is because it was actually plaster poured into a mold. Been doing it this way for thousands of years. Plaster is really nice because it lasts a long time. Mainly use the material to bring 2 different surfaces together and cover up any cracks that might be there to keep out the wind. Later, it just became more of a decorative thing that people do to houses, and builders use it a lot to hide your joints where your drywall comes together. You got your ceiling hitting your walls, or maybe at the base down there, you don't want that rough look, so they put on molding. This piece that we're using for our crown molding throughout the room looks a little different because we're going for an old stone look. So the mold actually had little pieces of styrofoam in it to form these little pits. When you pour the plaster into the mold, then you take the mold off, we've got this rough, original rock look to it. Flip the back side and you can see to add strength to the plaster, they've used hemp. This is like what they use to make ropes out of. Extremely strong. Plaster's been used, like I said, for thousands of years. Even in the pyramids, 4,000 years ago, they were using some plaster. It's still smooth and it's still very strong. So if you plan on living in your house thousands of years, plaster's not a bad choice to go with. As far as looks and patterns, you can really do anything. This is a frieze or a medallion, they call it. As you can see on the back side, it's plaster. You make a mold in any shape or any engraving, pour your plaster in, and you're ready to go. Now that is the great thing about using plaster. You can get very intricate detail. If you got a guy who knows how to build a mold, you can pour that plaster to look like anything. One problem with it though is price. It is very expensive. So we're going to use some different products throughout the rest of the house. Let's go take a look. Now this next molding we're looking at is made by a company called White River, and this is MDF, which is medium density fiberboard. And if you get real close, it looks like it's sawdust, but bigger. It's actually fibers, and they don't have to cut down any trees to manufacture this. They buy the waste or the scrap from a plywood factory that normally would be thrown away, and they shave it down and make this MDF out of it, and they put it together in layers, and you end up with a super strong wood that's not very expensive because you weren't tearing down trees, and then you can cut any relief or design in it that you want to make your molding. White River also makes some products out of poplar. With poplar, which is a hardwood, you can go much, much deeper with that. As you can see, really nice stuff. Look at the detail in this molding. Now, as far as using molding around the house, I mean, there's a million different things you can do. This could be a piece of base mold. Base mold is what goes on your floor. Start at your carpet or your hardwood and go up on your wall. As you can see, it's got a flat bottom there. You can use it for crown molding. Crown molding, again, you mount against a wall and against your ceiling, so you don't have a place where your drywalls come together. Makes a really sharp look. You can use it for casements. If you'd like to go around any of the doors or the windows in your house, that molding is called casement. Here we have something that could be used as a chair rail. Chair rail is just what it sounds like. Put it, let's say, in your kitchen or your dining room, so if you back a chair up, it doesn't hit the wall, it actually hits the trim. And people use it just for detail. It really looks good. Now, all of these are embossed, which means we cut away some materials. This next one is the opposite of that. This is an overlay. Here we have a piece of poplar. If you look, it almost looks like wood putty, but it's not. It's a resin mixed with fiber. And look at the detail in this relief. They've got it there. And we can paint or stain this to achieve any look that we're after. It's really, really sharp. It's the same density as the poplar itself, so it's going to last a long time. And unlike plaster, you can drive a nail through it and you're going to be okay. After you stain it, you just come in and put a little bit of wood putty. It's going to look great. It's not going to crack like a piece of plaster would. Price-wise, the MDF, of course, would be the most affordable, then poplar next, then poplar with the overlay would be your next one on the list. Now, when you're building a new house or remodeling your existing house, don't feel like you need just ordinary trim. You can do anything that you want, and it's not that expensive. You can go with MDF, which is very affordable. You can get it embossed. You can paint it any color that you like. If you need to go ahead and stain your trim, go with the poplar material, and again, you can get it embossed. You can do your overlays on top of poplar if price is not a problem. And it's really not that expensive, and you can have a really detailed, intricate look into the formal rooms of your house. And if you really want something different, go with the plaster. It may seem like a big investment now, but you're going to live with it for a lifetime. Well, our project home is moving quite quickly now. The guys are putting in the trim and installing all of our doors. When it comes to doors, you have a lot of selections. You can work with your checkbook and go by price, or you can go by design and some other benefits. This is the most common door that you see in most homes, and guess why? Because it's inexpensive. This is what builders like. This is a hollow core door. It runs about $20 or $30 per door, so as you can see, pretty inexpensive. When I say hollow core, this is why. There's nothing in the middle. It's actually just two panels of pressed material put together. As you can see, there's a little bit of flex there. You can kick through the door or put your fist through the door. I hope you don't ever get that upset, but it is possible. Not much to the door. Here we have a simulated wood grain in the door, and we've got some panels that have been pressed in. The panels are nice, sort of limited though on choices because the metal plate that it takes to press and make this door with these panels costs about $1 million per design. And if you're selling doors at 20 or 30 bucks, you got to sell a lot of doors to get your $1 million back. So you are going to be limited to just a few choices. You can't stain the door. Even though it has the wood simulated grain on it, you're going to have to go ahead and paint the door. It's not going to hold a stain and look proper. If you want to go to something that's a little more soundproof, a little stronger, we've got a solid core door. This one's slick. You can get a panel pressed into them as well. And here's what's in the middle of the door to make it a solid core. It's basically just particle board. And you have your sides put on each end. Then we've got a solid piece of wood on our ends. Now the reason for the solid piece of wood on the ends is because we're going to have to put in hinges, and we're also going to have to put in a door lock system, and we need something solid to get into. If we put it into that particle board, we're going to have a problem. So we have solid wood there. This is going to be a little more expensive. This one is smooth, but like I said, you can get a panel put into it if you like. What's real nice is you can have a trim carpenter come in and nail trim onto this and make any type of design that you're after. But of course, the more people that you have work on your doors, the more expensive it's going to be, material and labor. Next to it, we kind of have what everyone dreams about, and that's a solid wood door. Now, when you call it a solid wood door, it's actually a lot of solid wood pieces put together. Because of the way material and lumber is nowadays, you can't really get a solid piece of wood, carve it out, and have it remain the same size. It's going to move and shift. So a few things are done here. We have our stiles on each end. That's the pieces that run up and down. We have our rails, which are the pieces that run horizontal. And we've got them at the bottom the middle, and up at the top. Top rail, bottom rail, and a lock rail. Part of the reason they call this a lock rail is because of these panel pieces. This is a total separate piece also, and it actually floats in between the two stiles and the two rails. It's not glued in place, and it's not screwed or nailed in place. It floats because the door is going to expand and contract with moisture changes and temperature changes. And I guarantee when you stain this door, you paint it, and you put it in your house, the first time you kick on the air conditioner, it's going to adjust a little bit, and you're going to see a little bit of real wood around the edges of your panel because of all the pieces moving back and forth. But it is a good solid door. Our solid core door or our solid wood door is going to knock out a lot of noise. So if you have noisy kids, you might want this at least on their door, or if you have a media room, put a solid door on it. Now for our house, we didn't want to go to the expense of a door like this, which would be about $500 retail, but we wanted all the benefits. So we went with what's called a true style door. That's actually a brand name, and it's made of a medium density fiber. It's called MDF. You can see it's like wood shavings, but if they put it together in layers, you get a solid piece. And here we have a panel, and we have a stile, and you just slide it in like so, or rail and stile. So it looks just like a solid wood door, very, very strong, very quiet, but we don't have as much expense. Plus, it's more rigid, more stable. When we paint this, we're not going to have the painters come back in after the air conditioners run because we're not going to see a lot of expansion around here. But they are separate panels. We do have our stiles. The top and bottom we have a rail. Here we have something a little different. We went to the expense of getting the circular design in this one. And you're basically unlimited on designs because they're not pressing them in there like they are on the original ones. They can make anything that you want. Here we have more of a traditional look. But again, we have our stiles, our bottom rail, our lock rail, and our top rail with just a different panel pattern. If you go with the MDF door, make sure that it does have the solid wood on the edge of both stiles for your lock set and for your hinges. If you just screw into the MDF, it's going to end up tearing up in a short amount of time. When you're choosing your doors with the MDF doors or with the solid wood doors, you can have a lot more architectural detail around your edges that you just can't get with the pressed door. Now the solid wood doors are something you might use wherever you're really going to go heavy with stains, maybe in a study or in formal rooms. If you're going to go with painted doors, I highly recommend something like True Style. And the great thing about the MDF material is they didn't have to cut down any trees. This is all waste material that they get from plywood factories, and they grind it up to actually manufacture your door. So you're saving the environment by going with doors like this. And how many doors are in your house? I bet you can't guess. Go around and count it up. Our project house has 35 doors. So if we can save a little money per door and still have those great looks, it's well worth the investment. The Department of Justice states that 500,000 violent crimes happen each year in or around the home with guns. Now you need to protect your valuables, but you also need to protect your loved ones. We've done that in our project house. It all starts right here in this closet. Now before this room became a closet, we started out with the intent of making it a safe room. Not a safe room in the version of tornadoes and hurricanes, but a safe room from intruders and a place to keep your valuables locked up where even your kids can't get into them. Now we started by wrapping the whole room in steel mesh. The same steel mesh used by the ATF and the FBI. It's made by Amoco, the Alabama's Metals Industry Corporation, and it is super strong. Nobody's going to get through that system. It has little fasteners that actually hold it in place instead of nails. Put the fastener up there, you run a screw through it into the stud, and it actually stiffens all of the grid itself, so you have a much stronger room. We actually even put it up on the top and all four sides of the room. So we're really going to have a nice room here. Now also on our door frame, we're going with a thick special door, and we have steel mounted on the side of that with 3 openings in it. Now these aren't for hinges because this is the frame itself. These 3 places are for deadbolts. We're not going to have just one deadbolt. We're going to have a big one in the middle, one at the top, and one at the bottom. So nobody's going to kick in this door once we're done. Now we didn't just stop here and put up the drywall. There is something really special going on before we put up the drywall. Well, these green walls in our closet safe room is what's special, but it's not drywall. It's actually called Armor Core, and it's made by Waco Composites. Armor Core is bullet resistant, so it's going to make our safe room that much more safe. It comes in different levels. This first sheet is level 1. It can resist the impact from a 9mm bullet. Where these 2 black circles are is where this was shot. Flip it over to the other side, it did not penetrate. Now the reason I'm wearing gloves is because this is made out of fiberglass. If you look at it real close, you can see it's like in a basket weave pattern, and there's layers and layers of it, and each layer of that fiberglass absorbs the impact and the energy from that bullet and slows the bullet down to where it can't even penetrate out the other side. Now that's level 1. We went with level 2 in our safe room just to make it a little safer. You can see where it's shot 3 times, and this time it was done with a .357 Magnum for level 2, and it did not penetrate in any of the 3 locations. It stopped the shells from going all the way through. Over here we have level 3, and it was shot 3 times by a .44 Magnum, the Dirty Harry gun. Look on the back side, did not penetrate through. It's got sort of a ripple to it, but the bullets did not come through. Law enforcement agencies around the country use this stuff. It really works well. And then here we have level 4. This was shot with a .30 caliber rifle. Very high impact gun. As you can see on the back side, it did not penetrate through. A little bit of a ridge to it, but it didn't go through. Now the nice thing is it makes our safe room that much safer. Someone can't shoot in here. But once we're finished, we just put drywall on it and it looks like any other room in the house. Well, the guys have now got the drywall up in our closet, so we can finish off the interior any way that we like. It can be a conventional closet, a storage closet. We might even make a wine storage area in there as well. For our door, instead of going with steel, we're going to do it one better. We're working with Sun Door Company. They make hardwood doors, and they work with Waco composites to actually put armor core in the door itself, so an intruder can't shoot through the door. And the great thing is with this wooden door, they can shape it to look exactly like the rest of the doors in our house. So an intruder would never know there was anything different until they started firing a gun at it. Now the cost of this room is approximately $5,000, which is about double the price of a large gun safe. But of all the specialty rooms in this project house, this is by far and away the most valuable. It'll protect you and your loved ones. Well, as our project house moves along, the guys have started to install our permanent furniture. That's what I call cabinets, permanent furniture, because it's going to be here for the lifetime of the house. Woodmode has helped us out with cabinets. Woodmode builds really high-end custom cabinets. Since we're building $1 million house, we thought it'd be appropriate to use them in here. Now, there's a lot of things you can do with cabinets. You need to really start with your doors because it's the first thing people are going to see when they walk in. All different patterns you can do on the exteriors of the doors. Something to watch for is the frames on the doors or the frameless doors. If you look at what we have, you can see no exposed frame around these doors at all. That's because it's a frameless cabinet. You open it up, no frame in there either. It's got hidden hinges, so when you close the door, you don't see the hinge on the exterior. But you open it up and there it is. It's not like the old style hidden hinges that just open up 90 degrees. These cabinet doors do go to about 110, 120 degrees, so they get out of your way if you're working directly underneath the cabinet itself. Very nice cabinets. They do offer the traditional styles. Over here we've got a frame cabinet door, and as you can see, the difference is the frame is exposed. This is what people have used for years and years. A lot of people go into frameless now, but this is the traditional look. Just depends on the design of your house that you're doing as far as what you choose. Colors and finishes and different wood types are endless choices. Now the designer has done a lot of work with Woodmode when they picked out how this kitchen's going to lay out. Done a lot of the nice things as far as elevation changes on our upper cabinets. Our base cabinets cut back and forth just like our upper cabinets do. So it's very appealing to the eye when you walk in this kitchen. It's not just flat surfaces with flat tops. It moves all the way around. A lot of specialty items, like here, it looks like around our sink we just have a frame on this cabinet, but it's not a frame. You open it up, it's a spice rack. Back here in corners, a dangerous spot to have a lot of wasted space. You need to take advantage of all the space that you can in the kitchen. But here's an area that we wouldn't be able to reach, except Woodmode did something really nice here. You open our frameless doors, and it's a Lazy Susan inside, both on the top and the bottom. So we can spin that around, and we have access to everything in that cabinet from front to back. Woodmode even made all of our trim for us. They were putting above our cooktop. Here we'll have our updraft, pulling the smoke out. Again, very appealing to the eye. Got crown molding running around here. Our built-ins are gonna look awesome. Once we slide our refrigerators in, we've got a shelf where we can put things up on it. A lot of glass doors gonna be in here. Again, very, very nice to the eye. Now the kitchen isn't the only place that you're gonna have permanent furniture. Things you need to check out are also the utility room and the bathroom. Let's go take a look. Now, one place you're going to be around furniture every morning is in your bathroom, so you may as well do it nice in there as well too. We've done something similar to what we did in the kitchen with racks on both sides of our sink. We have a rack here where we can put perfumes or deodorants or aftershaves. On this side, we've got a rack where we can hang hand towels. So you don't have to have an ugly medicine cabinet or a towel rack built in around your sink area. You can put it right in the cabinets itself. Something really nice about this furniture is Woodmode put feet on the bottom of this. Instead of just running our cabinet straight down into the floor, they made it look like a really fine piece of furniture. And don't be afraid to go high up on your cabinets from the floor to the ceiling. It's okay to do, especially in utility rooms. There's not a lot of room in that area. You've got your washer and your dryer. You have tall things like mops, maybe even a little step ladder. You need room. Go ahead and take advantage of all the space in the utility room. Put in as many cabinets as possible. Before you lay out that kitchen or bathroom, there's just a couple more hints. Get with a designer from stage one. When you lay out those blueprints, have them help you pick the cabinets that'll suit your lifestyle and your eye when you walk into that room. Well, our project house is moving fast now. We've got a lot of things going on. Got our drywall up, our joint compound. This wall is going to be smooth, which means we're putting wallpaper up. But we're doing a lot of different finishes throughout the rest of the house. And we're not just painting the walls off-white and the trim white. We're not going to go cheap. Painted the whole thing brown. Now again, we're not trying to save money. We don't want just a brown house. But we're going to do special hand finishes that really look unique, really are going to stand out in each room in the house. Let's go in and get started on the very first one. Now Roger, you're painting leaves right into the wall. What do you call this?
Well, this is just a subtle glazing technique, but what I've done is I've got a fake leaf and I've just gotten that in the way of the glaze. So we get the nice impression of that leaf on the wall and then just go back over it and soften it.
Okay, so we got our base coat and then just a glaze on top of it.
That's right, exactly.
Is that hard to do?
Not at all, give it a shot.
All right, I'll try that. And I guess you could really use any pattern or look that you want for this. It doesn't have to be this type of leaf or anything.
That's right. In fact, you can just take the glaze and model that on the wall and then just take a rag and blot it in there as well. And that gives you a nice pattern too. It's a little simpler.
I like that. Now what do we do on top of that then?
Basically what I do is I wait for all this to dry, and it takes about half an hour to an hour. It's a very hot house right now, so it dries pretty quickly. Then after that, I'm taking some other colors in glaze and I'm laying them over the top. And you can see here I've got a nice brown tone here and a reddish brown tone down here that I've worked into it.
Okay, and you're going to take this reddish brown and this other brown all the way around the whole room?
That's right. It'll all go over the top of this. It softens it and gives it more of an old world kind of tea-stained effect.
It definitely changes because here, I mean, it's very apparent, but when you get down here, your leaves really kind of blend into everything.
That's right. It's much, much softer here, and that's the overall effect we're going for. But it's perfectly okay to just stop at this point if somebody likes the more dramatic effect of the leaves here and wants to do something a little bit more simple.
Okay, so you could just glaze the wall and wipe it off with a cheesecloth, or go ahead and do this and not take these other steps.
That's right. Still a nice finish.
Okay, and I noticed they hand troweled on our drywall on top here, so we do have a lot of texture. A glaze is really going to pop off this, isn't it?
That's right. The texture really catches the glaze and adds some interest all by itself. You don't really have to have a lot of talent to get that kind of interest when you have the texture there to begin with.
And then when you go from step to step, you're saying a homeowner can do this, or even the stenciling. When you go into these next phases, can you do it yourself, or do you need a professional for that?
Well, at this point, you might want to call on a professional. It just depends on what the homeowner is really comfortable with, how far they want to take it.
And how about cost? When you do something this involved, what happens?
By the time you get to the 3 or 4 steps that we've got here, you're probably looking at 30 to 40% more than the standard faux finish.
Okay, so a little bit extra, but I mean, definitely a great look once you're done. Now, if this is a finish that you'd like to attempt in your own house, find a place where no one's going to see it, like the kids' closet. Get a little glaze, put it on the wall, wipe it off with a cheesecloth, see how it looks with the background paint. Once you're comfortable there, go ahead and add some foliage for some patterns. And once you get really comfortable, come on out of the closet and do it throughout the whole house. Well, as our project house moves along, it's time to do wall finishes. And like everything else in this house, we're doing it as hard as possible. We've gone right to wall finishes 404. We've skipped the easy stuff. And we're doing Venetian plaster in this room with Chris Jewett, arguably the world's greatest decorative artist. Would you not agree?
No, actually not.
Okay.
Thanks.
Now, Chris, this is something that you rarely ever see. I mean, the wall actually reflects. I mean, how do you get that finish on it?
Well, this finish is basically several layers of plaster that are built up, and the final step of doing this is burnishing the plaster.
And what does burnishing mean?
It's actually just taking one of these nice little stainless steel trowels and going over the material with a lot of elbow grease.
Okay. Just basically burning it in there
That's
from
right.
friction.
What happens is, as you're burnishing, you actually compact the material, all of the high points of the material on the wall. And that just brings it up to nice, bright, shiny polish.
Well, it's definitely reflective. And I noticed that you've got different colors here. How many layers are you doing on this?
There are actually 3 layers in this one. There's a base coat, which essentially is the same color as this one. There's a color coat on top of that, and then the final coat is the base coat color once again over the top. And we put that on very, very thinly so that the secondary color shines through.
Man, it is so smooth also.
With the modern materials that we're using these days, the material just really adheres well. It's kind of an acrylic base, so it's very, very durable and makes for very low maintenance, durable finish.
And you're really turning that trowel flat and pushing it in there.
Yeah,
So
it takes a lot of elbow grease. It's a very strenuous type of finish to do.
And how do you, as hard as you're pushing it in, how do you still end up with all these lines and veins going throughout all the plaster?
You know, that's just part of the effect that the product itself gives us. It's just a matter that you're pushing the stuff on so thinly, so hard, that it's actually translucent. All the little veins and lines happen just as a result of the product itself.
And you said you're doing 3 coats on this wall?
That's right.
Okay, now with all this plaster being on the wall, are we going to have a problem with cracks or anything?
No, this is actually a modern acrylic product, and it has exceptional durability. It's very low maintenance. It's easy to patch. It's really a terrific, sophisticated finish.
Now, Chris, this is hard work, and I can tell that you've spent a lot of time learning how to do this. So I almost hate to ask, but can someone try this themselves in their home?
Yeah, it's just a matter of practicing. That's actually probably more essential than anything else, is just holding these tools in your hands long enough to get comfortable with them.
Okay, and if we're trying to find someone like yourself to do the work, who do we call?
Interior designer would be your best bet.
Thanks for helping us today.
You're welcome.
If you want a great finish like this, it is something you can try yourself, but we've also got another Italian finish you might want to see, and it's hidden right beneath that tarp. Now, up at the top of our scaffold, hidden underneath the tarps, you see something that you don't ordinarily see in a brand new house, and that's an awesome looking fresco. And I've got a great artist with me today. I've got Nicola Vigini, who came in here and did this fresco. And what are the steps to do something like this? I mean, this is an awesome project.
Yes, we first start, this is a traditional, very ancient technique that we have to adapt to modern times. So since we don't have a brick wall, we start by waterproofing the wall with tar paper first things, and then
so you put that on top of the drywall?
Yes, we do on top of the drywall to be sure the moisture doesn't go through, and then we start by put metal lath, just like in a traditional plaster
Normal
system.
plaster job.
Normal plaster job. We use only pure plaster, lime putty, and sand, and we put a scratch coat and a brown coat. And then after that, and we let it dry, of course, between layers, we move to the final layer, which is basically what is called intonaco. It's the painted layers. And we're doing in different patches. So each day we apply 1 layer of plaster, and while still wet, we paint an image on, and that's why it's called fresco.
And why do you do it in sections like that? I mean,
because it dries very fast, and it's not possible to do it all in one day.
Okay, and right here we see the line where you've got one section going up through here.
Exactly.
So you did that piece.
And you can see the joint here, where today we'll be applying the next layer.
And how do you do that? You can't just all be freehand. You've got to plan
No,
this out.
absolutely.
It's a big
You can
project.
plan, yes, because you cannot erase anything in fresco.
Yeah.
So we do what is called cartoon, which is a full-scale drawing with little pokes. We dash through and we transfer the image. You can still see a little bit of the drawing there.
So just apply it on there and then put some dust. And
We dust it off, and then you can see the image on the wet plaster, and then you're ready and start to plaster.
Now, this is not something someone would take on in their own house. I mean, they need a professional.
Oh,
like yourself.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there is only few of us that are doing this kind of technique. I come from Italy originally. That's where some people still practicing this technique. And like I said, it's very rare and it's very difficult. Makes life much harder for the painter himself. It's much harder technique to master, but has some unique quality, and you really will have something that it's the same exact technique that Michelangelo used in the Sistine Chapel. So something really unique today.
If you're working on your own walls inside your house, remember you're not just limited to paint and wallpaper. There are a lot of different choices out there, and yeah, it can cost a lot of money, but you can achieve any look that you've ever seen anywhere in the world. Well, as our project house moves along, it's really starting to get noisy in the neighborhood because we're doing a parade of homes. There's a lot of houses being built right here, and it's almost tea time. It's time to actually open up the parade. We're putting the cast stone on the exterior of the house and some natural stone. Now, cast stone is man-made. We can see a piece right here. I've got a piece of natural stone to put up next to it. This is a travertine stone, which is made from layers underneath the lake bed, and some of the gases bubble up through it and cause all these holes. Well, when you look at this cast stone, you see the holes also. So it almost looks like it. Doesn't have quite the same feel or touch to it, but it looks a lot like a natural stone. There's a lot of things you can do with it too. Over here we have the base of a column. As you can see, there's a lot of detail work in this column. Looks like it was hand carved. Now our window ledge looks like it's made out of stone, and even the pieces coming up on the side do because they're real heavy. Got some texture to it, but that's really stucco. We did this at the same time as we did the rest of the exterior of the house. It's an inexpensive way to add a stone look to the house. Unless you don't believe me, we'll back up here and show you where the backhoe operator backed into the house. As you can see, here's our scratch coat, our base coat, our color coat on the stucco. There's our mesh that held it all together, and the foam. Now I hit it pretty hard and that's why it busted, but it's very easy to fix. Stucco's not a problem to fix back in its original shape, so we'll do that before the parade opens. Now we do have natural stone underneath our overhangs here on the side of the house. It's totally just for looks, it's only cosmetic, but it really does add a touch of class to it. That wood underneath is just to hold it in place while it bonds to the stucco exterior, but it's going to add a lot of looks to the house without a lot of expense. Now in the back of the house, we really went crazy with the natural stone. Let's go take a quick look. Guess what this stone is out here on this pool deck? It looks really good, but it's hard to tell what it is. It's actually distressed marble, believe it or not. It comes from a company called Maxent, and it looks almost like a travertine with all these holes in it and pits and everything, but it's actually marble. Now you don't see a lot of the normal detail that you see in marble, but you will after we come back because we're going to clean it with muriatic acid, and it'll make it look a little bit more like a normal marble. We've used it for the pool deck because we actually ordered it for the driveway, but we kind of fell in love with it and started using it around the deck as well. Really nice surface. Being distressed, they kind of roughed it up at the quarry, so we're not going to slip on it when we get out of the pool with wet feet. Should be okay. Now we've got a couple different slates that we used. Back here we have one from India. And we use this on our balconies. Really looks good. Got a lot of different colors in it. You can see all the different veins in it. Up front is a piece that we got from China. This comes from a company called Walker Zanger, and we used it around our fence really as an accent piece, just like we did on the side of the house. Looks very sharp. Now the other pieces that you see underneath the slate are actually man-made. They're ceramics, and they're not going to hold any stains at all. Very easy to take care of. On the natural stones, you can flip a coin. Some of the companies say that you should seal the natural stone because it can hold a stain. Other companies say you should not seal the stone because it is natural and needs to breathe and it doesn't need a sealer on it. If you do choose to seal it, it's not like the old kind where they yellow real easy and they're hard to take care of. You can strip it back down and reseal it again. Should last a lifetime. Be careful when you put up stone. If there's any place where water can get underneath the stone and you live in a cold region of the country, when that water freezes in the wintertime, it can pop the stone right off. So make sure that no water is going to get behind the stone no matter where you put it on the house. And as you can see, you can use the stone here and there or even faux stone here and there and really improve the looks of your home. Well, as we're wrapping up our project house, there's a lot of activity going on. The guys are laying tile on the driveway, a lot of stuff happening to the exterior of the home. But today we're going to focus on the entryway. We've got some big wood custom doors. Let's go take a look. Well, as you can see, once we move up close, this is a massive set of doors. Now, standard doors on the front of a house are 3 feet wide, 6 feet 8 inches tall. If you get an oversized door, it's normally 3 feet wide, 8 feet tall. We're actually going all the way to 10 feet tall. Now, the reason the designers picked a door this big is because we have a really big house, and if you had little doors on the front of it, it just wouldn't look right. So they've gone ahead with big doors. And they're not only big as far as height, also width. The normal door is 1 3/4 inches thick. This one is actually 2 1/4 inches thick, a ½ inch thicker. Now when you go with something bigger like that and it's solid wood the way this one is, you need some big hinges. So we've got oversized hinges to actually support all that weight. You can go a little bigger than we have with this door, but not much, because if you get much bigger, you're going to end up with some sagging problems. Now on front doors on a house, you're going to hit a lot of weather, temperature changes and moisture changes, so you don't want the door to warp. And that's why when you go with a solid wood door like this, it's not one piece of wood, even though it looks like one piece of wood that's been carved. It's actually several pieces of wood put together, so we're not going to have warping problems. Now down the sides, running through here, these are called stiles. And they're the ones that run up and down. The ones that run crossway, those are called rails. And you can see right here, we've got grain going this way in our mahogany door, and we've got grain going this way. Now the door design company built this door for us, and as you can see they did a lot of handwork in here. Well, this piece, this solid piece here, is actually floating in between our rails and stiles. It's actually in there really tight, but if the door warps or moves just a little bit, this will move. We're not going to end up with a crack in our wood, and that's what we want to avoid at all costs. Now, you can see there's also a lot of handwork here. This piece was actually attached to our rail. I've got a piece right here that the guys did carve as well. There'd be a piece like this on this side and a piece going down the other side. As you can see, a lot of detail work even in those pieces. This pattern they call lattice rosette. It's because of the lattice work pattern that you see in here, and then the rosettes they put right where the lattice joins. Now they did it with a chisel. With mahogany, you can take a chisel with your hand and actually carve it out, but you can see it took a lot of man hours to build this door. We're going to go to a door next door a little later that's made out of oak, and when you do an oak door, you've actually got to have a hammer with your chisel. You can't just do it by hand. You're going to have to bang on it to actually get that look. Now even the frame itself is made out of mahogany as well, and this was not pre-hung. Normally when you buy doors nowadays, the door's already hung in the frame and you put the whole thing in at once. We put this frame in weeks and weeks ago when we were building the house. Then they came back and they hung the door. The frames moved a little bit because the house has shifted a little bit, so there was more man hours to get it adjusted just right. And when you do custom doors, it is going to take a little bit of work to get them to fit real snug. Ours has a real nice smooth action on it now. It's easy to open, and even as heavy as it is, a child could move the door back and forth. It fits in really well. One other thing on the frame is down here at the bottom. You've got to slope the water away from the interior of your house. It's flat right here where the door sits on it, but then it slopes downhill. The reason for that is we're going to have water hitting the door when it rains. We need that water to go down, and then we need to go away from the house. We don't want any moisture coming inside the house. Now we've got a door just a little further along next door from the door design company. It's made out of oak. Let's go take a quick look. Now the builder of this house did a totally different style home, so he did a totally different style custom door. So you can see we've got more of a Gothic look with this big archway above it. A lot of work went into this. I mean, it's hard to make an arch out of wood, and they did a great job on it. Actually, in our insets here between our rails and our stiles, they did a French linen fold pattern that they carved out, or chiseled out basically. As you can see, it looks like a piece of linen that's actually folded over on itself. Got a little fleur-de-lis right there on top of it. Neat detail on this house also is this brick mold. It's 6 inches wide, it's about 1 3/4 thick. And you can see a lot of hand carving, a lot of work. This is a detail I really like on this archway right here. So you can see there's several pieces of wood that were actually carved and then put together to form that archway. A lot of work that went into that. Here you can get a good look at our weather stripping that goes down all the way through. Our sill down here at the bottom to prevent any moisture from getting in. Again, it tilts away from the house, so any water is going to run away from the house. When you're building a house, you need to make your custom doors match the house. So whatever style you go with, you can do with a custom door. Price-wise, anywhere from about $8,000 to $15,000, depending on what you're buying. If you're building $1 million house, I guarantee it's a good investment. When it comes to bathrooms, you can go ordinary or you can go exceptional, and we did blow it out on our project house. So you can see it's a beautiful bathroom. It's huge as far as size. We got a lot of limestone that we used on the floors. Also used it for some surrounds on our fireplace. Now when you get to our bathtub, we went big just like the rest of the bathroom. And this is actually a tub from Americh. And what's special about it is it can either shoot water or shoot air. Down here you can see the actual air jets in the bottom. And that gives a real soothing feel. And then here on the side, you can actually see the water jets for that whirlpool feel. Over here, we've got a fixture that's very unique. It's from a company called Herbeau Creative of America. Now Herbeau is actually a French company. It's 140 years old, and a lot of the designs that they do now are actually stuff they originated over 100 years ago. So you can see we got separate handles for hot and cold, and in the center we've got a ball, and in this brass fixture, that's where the water mixes together, and that brass helps dissipate some of the heat so it's not too hot when it first comes out. Really, really nice fixture. Herbeau is a great company. They also did our sinks that we've got in here. Take a look at this. At Herbeau, they actually have molds in the shape of the sinks made out of wood. And they place the weathered brass on top of that wood, and they actually pound it into the shape of the mold itself. And that's how you end up with this gorgeous sink. Now our faucets are, again, 19th century style. We've got our common ball joint there in the middle to mix the waters together and, again, dissipate part of the heat. Really a nice looking sink and faucet combination. How do you like this for the shower floor? A beautiful tile mosaic. We got it from Walker Zanger, and this is actually tumbled marble from Tuscany, and it looks beautiful. Now it looks like a lot of little pieces that we did by hand, but we didn't do it by hand. They actually did it at Walker Zanger because it has a mesh on the back side of it. So we just put it in place as one unit and then grouted over it. It looks great. Now we also have our Herbeau fixtures in the shower itself to match the rest of the master bathroom. And we've got something here that's a little different. We actually have shower nozzles at different heights, so we hit the whole body at one time. Now when you do something like this, it's a little different from an ordinary shower because you need to run a 3/4 inch pipe instead of a 1/2 inch pipe. The reason for that is volume. It doesn't increase water pressure, but we need more water since we have more places where the water is going to exit out of the pipe itself. One other thing that you need to do is actually loop the pipe back into the system. If you just have it come up like you normally would for a shower and just one place to come out, we'll have a lot more pressure down here than we will on these nozzles up here. So you actually loop it and go back down in the water pipe so we have even pressure and even water coming out at all of these nozzles at the same time. In the laundry room, we went with more Herbeau, both for our fixtures and for our sink itself. But instead of using a metal sink, we've got a hard fire clay farmhouse style sink. The reason we went with clay is because it's nearly indestructible. They fire this to 800 degrees, so you can drop things in it. It's not going to crack, it's not going to scratch, we're never going to break it. Good quality sink. With the fixtures, you got that 100-year-old look to it, the old pump style. You used to pump it to get the water to come out. This one, of course, much easier because people are lazier nowadays. And we've got a spray rig also. Very, very nice. In our cabana bath, we went with a totally different style sink. This is actually called a pompadour design, where it loops over. We have our faucets here, but the whole thing is suspended basically in the air. There's no cabinet below it where we run our plumbing pieces, so we've really got to plan ahead. We need to know exactly what height we're going to set the sink at. We need our plumbers to bring the pipes up in the wall where we can't see it behind our natural stone here, and then bring it out at exactly the right height. That way, whenever we're using the sink and we're walking around it, we're not seeing pieces of plumbing. It all disappears in the wall. Here in our guest bathroom, we have some more Herbeau, but it's a little different than the rest of the house. We actually have a clawfoot tub that's freestanding, and nothing touches the walls. No part of the tub itself, and no part of our fixtures. As you can see, it routes right back down into the floor. So just like in our cabana bath, we had to plan ahead exactly where the tub was going to set and exactly where we wanted the plumbing to go because we didn't want anything that doesn't look right showing. We want it to be really clean and look really sharp. And up above, we also have something really nice. We've got a curtain suspended basically where it doesn't touch any part of the wall. It hangs from the ceiling and goes all the way around the tub to stop any moisture from getting outside. Here in our hall bath, we have a very unique sink from Kohler. So you can see it's got expanded sides on it. It's a very elongated pattern. Now you've got to have enough countertop for this. You don't just find one in a design center and say, hey, put this in. You've got to plan ahead so it doesn't overpower the whole countertop. Here we have a faucet. It's actually comes from a company called California Faucets, and it's an oil rubbed bronze. So you can see it almost has a satin finish to it. Very unique looking faucet. We also have another tub from Amrich, and what's really special about this one is it has the Whirlpool jets in it, but it's one you can retrofit into your own home. It's basically the size of a standard tub, and all you really need is to have a skirt that you can put up here and access to get underneath it, because there is a pump in there, and you don't have to hardwire it into your electric in your house. It has a plug-in, so as long as you have an outlet and you have enough room to set the tub in and put the skirt on it, you're ready to go with the Whirlpool tub in basically any bathroom. Well, in our kitchen, just like our bathrooms, we used a lot of natural stone from Walker Zanger. This is really nice and very different. This is called Aqua Forte. It came from Argentina, but they actually etched this pattern in these 4 pieces with water. And if you run your finger across it, it's smooth there, and then whenever you get to where there's color, it's actually rough. That's actually been cut out with high pressure water. And they come back and hand stain it, and it looks great. It really highlights our kitchen. Now, last but not least, we've got our country kitchen sink. Now, it's really nice. It's actually made out of copper, but as you can see, the finish is a little different than ordinary copper. It doesn't have this shiny look to it. That's because they hand brushed and then dipped this in a solution so that we get a nice, even change in our finish. It all ages at the same time. Back in the back, we have a brass faucet. Now, this is not a last-minute add-on. Unlike an ordinary faucet, we don't have our normal hookup for it. This is actually in the wall, and we had to plan for this ahead of time to make sure we hit the exact right spot, and then we had the right kind of pipes and the right joints that are protruding out of here to hook up this style of faucet. Hope what you learned from this segment is you can do anything in your kitchens and bathrooms as long as you plan ahead. You take a little time, pick out all your fixtures and your sinks and your tubs before you get started, show them to your builder, make sure everything's in the right place, and you can have an awesome looking kitchen and bath. Well, as our project house continues to grow and grow, one thing we've realized is it's really a big house and has a lot of steps, and probably one of the last things we want to do is be dragging vacuum cleaners throughout this whole house once we're done. So we're going to install a central vac system. Now, a central vac system is a vacuum system that's actually mounted inside the walls. We'll be able to plug into it in every room of the house. Come on, I'll show you how it's installed. This PVC pipe in the wall is actually where all of our dirt is going to be sucked out of this room and go back to a collection canister in the garage where the motor is also, so we don't have a big heavy unit to carry around. It's all out in the garage. Now, once all this is installed, all we need is some vacuum hose. We've got about 35 feet here. We've also got a vacuum sweeper head on it. We're able to do the whole house. It's not heavy, very light to carry up and down stairs. The PVC pipe is also very lightweight because it's not like a water pipe. It doesn't need to be real thick. You're not going to have a lot of pressure. You're just going to have some air suction on it. Once our drywall is up and painted and done, we'll come in and trim this out. It has a flip cover on it that has a spring in it so it closes whenever you're not using it. When you open it up, you just stick in your vacuum hose like so. These little electrodes on the vacuum hose let it know that you're on the system, and it cranks up out in the garage and it'll start suction through the whole house. Some people are worried about these long pipes. Will it really have enough suction? It does have a lot of pull since it is a closed system. When you plug in one room, that's the only place the suction is, not throughout the whole house. So you're not going to run out of suction power to get everything out of the carpet. Now, to finish this system, we need to go ahead and put up our drywall out in the garage, but once we're done, we'll go ahead and install the unit. Well, here we are a few months later and our garage is complete. We've got our walls up and we've got the heart of our unit. This is where all the dirt's going to come. This is the motor. This is where all the suction is created, right here at this unit. This is a pipe that we run throughout the whole house. It's coming in here. We're pulling the air and the dirt into here. Now, this is a container that the dirt's going to go into. We don't have a bag like you would on a normal vacuum cleaner that you use in your house. You actually have a container to hold it all. And it puts the air and the dirt in there in a method that's called cyclonic. It actually spins it. If you look at the grooves here, they actually spin down like so. And the reason for that is we want to spin the dirt and push it up against the sides of the container. So we're really going to pack it in there and fill it up before we have to dump it. And we're going to clean the air a lot before we put the air back out. Because see, when you have a vacuum cleaner and you're pulling air into it, well, you've got to push air out as well. It can't just get bigger and bigger. It's got to go somewhere. So the air has an exhaust on this side that it's going to come out of. And we've got to clean that air before we blow it out in the garage because we don't want any of this dust to actually blow out into our garage itself. So inside here, just half a turn, we have a HEPA filter. Now this is a great filter system, especially if you have like allergies or anything like that, because it's really going to cut down on the small particles. And the air is going to be really clean before it goes out into our garage. So clean that you could even put this inside the house, maybe inside a laundry or utility room. It'll be okay in there. If you use a conventional vacuum cleaner, it also has to put air out when it's pulling in the dust. It can't just blow the bag up bigger and bigger. So a lot of times dust does get out when you use a conventional vacuum cleaner. With a built-in system like this, we're not going to have a problem. It'll be out in the garage or in the utility room and it'll be clean before it exhausts. Let's go back inside the house and see the finished system. Well, as you can see, our dining room is complete, so now it's time to try out the system. Plug the hose into the wall and we're off and running. System works good, plenty of power, and there's no dust inside the house. We're actually pulling the dirt out of the house the way we should. Now the hose is really long, but we've got a big house. We need to reach a lot of areas at a distance. If you have a little bit smaller room or ordinary house, then you can definitely use smaller hoses. You don't have to drag this much around. Before we leave, I want to show you a really nice part of this vacuum system that's in the kitchen. Let's take a look. Now, what if you have hard floors and you're not going to vacuum clean this floor? What do? Well, normally you sweep it, but then you end up with that pile. It's a lot of work to bend over and actually sweep it into a dustpan. Just kick it off into a pantry or a closet or underneath the rug. We've got a better solution. Here, underneath our cabinets, we have a floor vac system. You just turn it on with your toe, and you can hear it start up. We'll simulate the kitchen floor with a few things that drop down, and all you do is just sweep them right into the system, and it sucks it right up. It's that easy or what? Well, as you can see, this is a great system for the whole house. So if you're building a new house, and in some cases, if you're remodeling, you can go with the central vac system. They're not very expensive, and they're great in case you have allergies. No matter how much money you end up spending on a house, it really gets down to lighting as far as making or breaking the total looks of the package. We got some help from Lee Lighting on our chandelier that we have here in our dining room, plus the one we have in the front foyer. Then there's a few things to consider when you're picking out those lights to light up a room. Number one with the chandelier is weight. That is a big, heavy chandelier. So we had to brace up for it up in our framing before we ever put the drywall on the ceiling itself. Now both here in the dining room and in our front foyer, we ended up with big chandeliers. And part of the reason was for how it looked from outside the house, because in both areas we have big windows, and at nighttime you can see these chandeliers lit up. We wanted to make sure it looked good from the outside as well as from the inside. Now we've done a lot of different lighting treatments throughout the whole house. Let's run over to the kitchen and take a look at some options. Well, in our breakfast nook, we have another chandelier, but a totally different style and feel to it. We even have some under the cabinet lighting here in our kitchen and a lot of can overheads because we really want to light up a lot of the area. Now with our chandelier, it looks different because it's actually an alabaster finish. Lee Lighting helped us pick this to make sure that it was appropriate for our kitchen, and it really cuts down on the glare. Alabaster is actually a fossil rock that's actually been carved into the shape of this shade. I'll put a flashlight against it and you can see it's got some veins in it. And you can get different types of alabaster depending on where they got it out of the ground. You can see a lot more veins in this one. We have a lot of wall sconces throughout the house, in all of our bathrooms, down some of our hallways and everything. The purpose is to cut down on the glare. Our bulb is here against the wall. This hangs underneath it and around it, so we're not going to see as much glare. This one looks like alabaster, but it's actually made out of a resin. So just like the glass, it's lighter and it is less expensive. Throughout the whole house, we did do a lot of can lighting. Now can lighting is to light up a big area. We didn't want fixtures just hanging from the ceiling, so we put these cans up between our ceiling joists. And then we can put any type of interior finish we want in the can and any type of light. Here we have an eyeball light. As you see, put it here. The only part that you're going to see inside the house is this piece. So you can go with whatever color you like and whatever finish. The eyeball light is nice. You want to swivel. We have a mural here in our breakfast nook, and you can turn that to face right against the wall. Instead of shining down, you can go right against it. A lot of different types and looks, different effects you can get with these type of lights. So remember, when you're picking out the lighting for your house, on the chandeliers, go big, but not too big. You don't want to overwhelm the room with the chandelier. Plus, you want to consider how it looks outside the house as well as inside the house. And if glare is a problem that affects your eyes, go with some type of shades or wall sconces to cut down on the bulb itself. Now the alabaster looks great, but remember, there are more affordable options out there to get that same effect. Most of the Building Your New House segments that I did this season on the show took place at this one project house in Dallas, Texas. Since the home's complete, I'd like to walk you through every part of the house and let you see what the final product looks like. Now, if you remember, inside the family room, we were doing very unique techniques in here that looked kind of weird at the time, but now it all pulls together. If you remember, we had a lot of white plaster. Well, if you look at our fireplace around and our mantelpiece, it really looks sharp now that we've put the faux finish on it and made it look like ancient limestone. Not only around the fireplace, but our columns going on up the walls. We had a lot of trim, and then we had this crown molding that, remember, it was very big, very heavy looking. Well, now it really blends in and it looks like ancient stone throughout our whole family living area. Our columns, the same way. We had big white plaster columns. We didn't want that look, so we went ahead and did the faux finish to again blend in with the rest of the house. If you remember back to when we did our cabinets and our countertop stories, the kitchen was still in pretty rough shape. Now it's complete and it looks spectacular. On our countertops, they've gone ahead and mounted them and sealed it up. As you can see, we got a little bit of a seam here, but it blends in very nicely. It's smooth to the touch. Just spectacular looking countertops. Our cabinets, we put a lot in a small area because you never have too much storage space inside your kitchen. Wood Mode helped us out with finding little pockets, shelves, slide outs, anything where we could get some extra items in our cabinets. Now in our breakfast nook, we built that special fireplace and we had a lot of tile work to go around it. As you can see, the guys did an excellent job. And if you remember, each one wasn't an individual piece of tile. They actually put it down with mesh backing so you could cover a lot of ground at one time. And this wasn't the only fireplace in the house. If you remember, we had the see-through fireplace both between the dining room and the family room, and we had one between the bathroom and the master bedroom. Behind this wall for the second story bedroom is where we installed our I-joist flooring system. We did that instead of normal lumber so we wouldn't have any squeaky floors upstairs. It is a smooth, even, level floor and, more importantly, no squeaks. Now on our bridge here, we had a lot of work to do. We installed a glue lamb to support all of the weight since this is hanging just in the air. Then we ran I-joist crossways. Now, since this house is so big, we did a lot of HVAC work to make sure that we'd get the exact right temperature throughout that whole house. There's actually 16 separate zones, so we can shut off areas in the house we're not even using, and we'll save money every month. Now let's just take a moment to see this project house from start to finish.